Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales. Chapter 5682. This battle that was triggered by the 7 devouring demons sealing art ended just like that. Kang Xinmu did not know what the 7 devouring demons sealing art was, which was why Leng Zhanghong wanted to destroy it at all costs. In order to destroy the 7 devouring demons sealing art, Leng Zhanghong's obsession incarnated in this ancient city, in the name of protecting the 7 devouring demons sealing art, waiting for cultivators who came looking for the 7 devouring demons sealing art. Presumably, many of the puppet residents in the ancient desolate city were cultivators who came looking for the 7 devouring demons sealing art. It was also because of this matter that Kang Xinmu saw the true face of the 7 devouring demons sealing art, Feng Ling. He did not know whether this was a blessing or a curse. The moment Leng Zhanghong disappeared, his words caused Kang Xinmu to waver. In this battle between destroying the 7 devouring demon sealing art and protecting the 7 devouring demon sealing art, it seemed like Kang Xinmu was the winner. But in reality, there was an unknown conspiracy hidden within. Moreover, because of Leng Zhanghong's words, Kang Xinmu even had a feeling that Leng Zhanghong's obsession still existed. As long as the 7 devouring demon sealing art was not destroyed, Leng Zhanghong's obsession would continue to exist. Kang Xinmu was already a qualified supreme cultivator, he was no longer young and frivolous. Along the way, other than the growth of his cultivation, his temperament had also been tempered. If Feng Ling did not appear, Kang Xinmu would only think that the 7 devouring demon sealing art was some kind of evil technique. As long as one could control it well, it would be able to play its role. But then, Feng Ling appeared. In order not to be destroyed by Leng Zhanghong, Feng Ling chose to stand on Kang Xinmu's side, but this did not mean that Feng Ling recognized Kang Xinmu as the new owner of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Between the two, there was only a relationship of benefits. What made Kang Xinmu afraid was that Feng Ling could summon the divine light. It was said that Xinguang had signed a contract with the 8-god astrolabe before Haifan picked it up. When Kang Xinmu killed Haifan, Xinguang did not show up. However, at this time, he appeared because of Feng Ling's summon. It wasn't that Kang Xinmu hadn't summoned the divine light before, but he had failed. How did Feng Ling achieve this with the spirit of the 7 devouring devil sealing art? Furthermore, he had never come into contact with the 8-god star plate before. Rather than saying that Feng Ling was the spirit of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, it would be better to say that Feng Ling was an independent entity. Just like Xinguang and the others, he existed in a parallel world. Due to some coincidences, he came to this world and was trapped in the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Of course, these were just Kang Xinmu's guesses. As for what Feng Ling's true identity was, Feng Ling had no intention of revealing it. After this battle ended, she had no intention of revealing it. After this battle ended, Feng Ling disappeared. Kang Xinmu could still use the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. He could also activate the inscriptions of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The power within had also recovered to its original strength. However, the devouring ability of the devouring power had increased by quite a bit. After devouring the flame of undead spirits, he had also absorbed a portion of the flame of undead spirits and obtained a portion of the flame of undead spirits' attributes. Now, when devouring something, he would refine a portion of the devoured power. No matter who Feng Ling was, what Kang Xinmu needed to do now was to become stronger. If he was strong enough, he wouldn't be afraid of being devoured. The 8-god astrolabe was now a part of his strength. This time, he had to find the base of the 8-god astrolabe. Whether it was Xinguang, Cruel or Peyuan, they were all potential threats. Kang Xinmu looked at the 8-god astrolabe again. The dozen or so contract imprints were basically the same, giving him the feeling that he had absolute control. As for the other 5 different imprints, they represented 5 contracted living beings. They weren't absolute control. Kang Xinmu pondered for a moment. He gathered his soul consciousness and imprinted it on these 5 imprints. A layer of faint white halo flashed. This was the power of the Supreme Sacred Ice Realm. As he expected, the Supreme Sacred Ice Realm's power basically covered his soul consciousness. The Supreme Sacred Ice Realm's power covered the imprints, causing the gray imprints to gradually be dyed white. It was more like a suppressive barrier. After doing all this, Kang Shinmu set off. However, he had only taken a few steps when he felt some strange movements from the flame of undead spirits. The flame of undead spirits seemed to have sensed something and released a ghostly glow. This ghostly glow gave Kang Shinmu a feeling that it was hot and cold at the same time. It was very strange. Kang Shinmu stopped and looked around. Only then did he realize that this courtyard was no longer the courtyard with the battle formation. Although the buildings around this courtyard were a little old, they were still in good condition and hadn't suffered any serious damage. Looking at the style of the buildings, it was no longer in the ancient desolate city. Not long ago, when they were trapped in the battle formation, Tang Xiaoyu had sent Senior Moya out of the battle formation. She should still be in the ancient desolate city. Kang Shinmu immediately collected his thoughts and prepared to head to the ancient desolate city. Before he took a few steps, he felt the strange feeling from the flame of undead spirits again. Kang Shinmu released the Supreme Sacred Ice Realm's power and sensed the things around him. Wait! There seems to be something. With a glance, Kang Shinmu saw a black metal piece that had fallen to the side. This black metal piece looked very familiar. Moreover, the power it gave off was very similar to the power when the Annihilation Realm opened. After the Annihilation Realm exploded, it had indeed become a piece. But it couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Even if it had become a piece, it should be in the ancient desolate city and not in this unfamiliar city. Kang Shinmu stared at the black metal piece with a solemn expression and looked at the place where the metal piece had fallen. On the roof of the 4-story pavilion, there were a few cultivators fighting together. All of them were unforgiving. I have already told you the clues of the star map lock. Do you still want to fight with me for this mystic iron fragment? The person who spoke was wearing the same clothes as Xiaofan. He was a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion. If someone else said that this is a mystic iron fragment, I might believe it. But you are a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion. Why would a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion fight with us for a mere mystic iron fragment? The person who spoke was a yellow-haired young man. The young man looked at the disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion coldly and sneered. Don't hide anything. We all know that this is a Annihilation Realm fragment. I can't back down. What a coincidence. I can't back down either. The disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion added. Both sides, no, it should be multiple sides, were in a stalemate. Looking at their stance, they didn't seem to have noticed Kang Shinmu's existence. Kang Shinmu silently went over to pick up the Annihilation Realm fragment. He put it away and quickly left the place. His journey was smooth until he reached the city gate. Seeing that the city gate was right in front of him, Kang Shinmu was stopped by Gu Tianze, who suddenly appeared. You are Kang Shinmu? Why are you still alive? Chapter 5683. At that time, when Kang Shinmu was trapped in the battle formation of the battlefield domain, everything he faced, Gu Tianze had already predicted. Kang Shinmu seemed to have the strength to fight Leng Zhanghong, but that was only because Leng Zhanghong did not use his full strength. Once Leng Zhanghong had the intention to kill, Kang Shinmu would not be able to escape no matter what. Not only Gu Tianze thought so, even Qing Fu, that mysterious young man, and even Lian Yi, they all thought that Kang Shinmu would lose his life in the battle formation of General Leng Zhanghong. Therefore, at this time, when Gu Tianze saw Kang Shinmu appear here, he was abnormally surprised. Moreover, this city was also a certain distance away from the ancient desolate city. How did Kang Xinmu arrive at this ancient city, and did not reveal any traces? Kang Xinmu had seen Gu Tianzi before, but did not know who this person was. He only lightly nodded at Gu Tianzi, then bypassed Gu Tianzi, and walked towards the city gate. Gu Tianzi was surprised that Kang Xinmu could actually walk out of Leng Zhanghong's battlefield domain. Seeing that Kang Xinmu was about to leave the city, his figure suddenly turned, rushing towards Kang Xinmu, slapping out a palm. Kang Xinmu had long been vigilant. When Gu Tianzi made his move, he promptly used the Supreme Dragon martial skill, dodging Gu Tianzi's attack while also blocking Gu Tianzi's palm. Judging from the level of Kang Xinmu's Supreme Dragon martial skill, Kang Xinmu's strength seemed to have improved a lot. Gu Tianzi could not help but secretly sigh in his heart at Kang Xinmu's talent. Kang Xinmu's mind was focused, operating his own strength, ready to fight at any time. In this world, there was always competition between cultivators. Being in the secret realm, it was even more so. Every cultivator was an opponent competing with each other. In order to compete for the cultivation resources in the secret realm, there were many who fell out and became enemies. This was the case for the disciples of the same sect, not to mention strangers. Apart from respect, Kang Xinmu was more on guard against Gu Tianzi. Gu Tianzi could see that Kang Xinmu was on guard against him and did not find it strange at all. When he sensed the power around Kang Xinmu again, he couldn't help but feel surprised. Kang Xinmu had really obtained the power of the fragment of the seven devouring devil sealing art. The corners of his lips curled up, revealing a meaningful smile. There were all kinds of rumors about the seven devouring demon sealing art, but as for how many of them were true, not many people knew. Even General Leng Changhong, who wholeheartedly wanted to destroy the seven devouring demon sealing art, did not have a complete understanding of it. In this world, Feng was probably the only one who had a complete understanding of the seven devouring demon sealing art. Unfortunately, just like the legend of the seven devouring demon sealing art, the world's theory of sealing was also very mysterious and not very trustworthy. Now that Kang Xinmu obtained 2 fragments of the seven devouring demon sealing art, whether it was a blessing or a curse, it would have to depend on Kang Xinmu's fortune. Gu Tianzi, as one of the enforcement elders in charge of the 4 great sects in the Outer Realm, could be said to be the existence with the highest authority in the Outer Realm on the surface. Regarding the rumor that fragments of the seven devouring demon sealing art would appear in the mystic realm, he had naturally long heard of it. However, compared to the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragments, he was more concerned about Feng's traces. The existence of the 7 devouring demon sealing art seemed to have suddenly appeared in the world of cultivators. Its origins were a mystery. The cultivation methods, secret treasures, or magic artifacts, or even sacred items of heaven and earth, did not appear out of thin air for no reason. Whether it was refined by cultivators, or derived from the formation of the cultivation world, and so on, all would have a certain origin. And regarding the origins of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, there was simply no credible basis. It was said that the spirit of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was called Feng Ling. By controlling Feng Ling, one could know the origins of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, as well as the mysterious world behind it. Gu Tianzi did not have much understanding of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, but he knew a thing or two about Feng Ling. Generally, the spirits of magic artifacts or cultivation methods were formed because the magic artifacts, cultivation methods, and cultivation methods had absorbed the essence of heaven and earth for a long time, and after a long period of tempering. In essence, they were still magic artifacts, cultivation methods, and cultivation methods. If the magic artifacts, cultivation methods, and cultivation methods were damaged, their spirits would also be injured, and in serious cases, they might disappear. If the spirit wanted to be formed again, it would require a long recovery process. But Feng Ling was different. Feng Ling could travel through the other world. Without opening the gate of contract or the gate of the other world, he could travel through the other world with his own strength. This was what Gu Tianze saw with his own eyes in the process of searching for Feng. It was something that Feng had personally recorded. Regardless of whether this matter was true or false, it made Gu Tianze lose interest in studying the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Being in a high position, one's knowledge was broader. There were some things that they could not easily touch, and this phenomenon was called heavenly rule. Like the 7 devouring demon sealing art that surpassed heavenly rule, Gu Tianze would not touch it if he could. Gu Tianze came to this city to search for Feng's whereabouts, so he did not stay for long, and quickly left this place. Even after Gu Tianze left, Kang Xinmu did not relax. After walking out of this ancient city with his tense nerves, Kang Xinmu finally heaved a sigh of relief. Even though he had experienced that great battle and had a breakthrough in his cultivation, when he faced Gu Tianze, he could still feel a strong sense of oppression. Gu Tianze did not interfere with Kang Xinmu, but he did not intend to let Kang Xinmu off just like that. Just now, he had felt the aura of fallen destruction. In the ancient desolate city, after fallen destruction's explosion, although there was no huge explosion, fallen destruction was indeed destroyed. Kang Xinmu and the rest wholeheartedly left the fallen destruction ruins for the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment, and the fallen destruction fragment fell into the hands of other cultivators. That cultivator brought the fallen destruction fragment out of the ancient desolate city, and when he came to this city, he met the everlasting pavilion disciples. In the process of fighting for the fallen destruction fragment, the first disciple who obtained the fragment was killed. The fallen destruction fragment fell into the city. Gu Tianze would not let Kang Xinmu have it so easily. Before he left, he sent a message to those everlasting pavilion disciples who were arguing. The group of people then realized that the fallen destruction fragment had already disappeared. One by one, they flew out of the ancient city, and caught up to Kang Xinmu, and surrounded Kang Xinmu. Hand over the fallen destruction. The first to speak was the everlasting pavilion disciple. The moment he opened his mouth, it revealed that the profound iron fragment that had just fallen was actually a fragment of perish. More accurately, it was fallen destruction. The main form of the fallen destruction artifact was such a small fragment. What palace, it was just a self-formed space. Fallen destruction itself was also a spatial artifact. Of course, after experiencing that explosion, the self-formed space had already been destroyed, and the supreme sacred ice domain power within it had been completely devoured by Kang Xinmu. It could be said that the current fallen destruction did not have much value. Kang Xinmu stopped in his tracks. These people looked like they were stupid, and they actually caught up so quickly. Compared to the disciples of the Wuxia Pavilion and the Cloud sect, these rogue cultivators were more rational. Seeing that Kang Xinmu was a difficult person to deal with, they immediately banded together to fight against Kang Xinmu. These few people all had at least level 6 supreme god power. When they attacked together, even Kang Xinmu did not dare to be careless. Kang Xinmu gathered the devouring power and swept it towards the few cultivators who were blocking his way. Soon, they were surrounded. Although they all had level 6 supreme god power, Kang Xinmu's supreme god power had broken through to level 6 in the previous battle and was able to resist the peak of level 7. These few people's attacking methods were mainly the supreme curse technique. If they could devour the supreme curse technique, they might be able to make a breakthrough in their supreme divine fire power. Kang Xinmu's first attack shocked the few rogue cultivators. Rogue cultivators dare to be so arrogant? Jiang Shenwu appeared here alone. Anyone could tell that he was a rogue cultivator. It was really arrogant for a rogue cultivator to dare to challenge so many cultivators. Aren't you guys also rogue cultivators? Kang Xinmu was not afraid of these rogue cultivators' attacks. He just felt that their words were strange. We're all rogue cultivators, but you guys are even more arrogant than me? Kang Xinmu raised his eyebrows. He did not hold back at all and charged out of the encirclement forcefully. He then defeated all the rogue cultivators. Moreover, he was not a rogue cultivator. It was just that he had accidentally barged into this secret realm. After dealing with the trouble, Kang Xinmu left quickly. He was so fast that the disciples of the Cloud sect from the Wuji pavilion had not caught up yet. However, this did not mean that no one was blocking his way. Just as Kang Xinmu left the ancient city, he saw large groups of cultivators rushing over. Not long ago, the news of Kang Xinmu breaking the battle formation in the ancient city spread like wildfire. Once the news spread, it could not be stopped. Before Kang Xinmu returned to the ancient city, the news had already spread. Kang Xinmu breaking the battle formation meant that Kang Xinmu had obtained the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the ancient city. All the cultivators who came to the ancient city came for the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. They did not care about what happened after the battle formation in the ancient city was opened. They did not care how many cultivators died for the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. They did not care how Kang Xinmu obtained the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The cultivators who came for the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art only had one goal, and that was to obtain the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The battle formation in the ancient city was broken, and the courtyard where the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was sealed also turned into ashes. The ancient city had experienced a great battle and was in ruins. The cultivators who were waiting outside the city to reap the benefits did not wait for Kang Xinmu, nor did they find any trace of Kang Xinmu in the ancient city. Judging from the degree of distortion in the surrounding space when the battle formation was broken, Kang Xinmu had already left the ancient city. When the news that Kang Xinmu had obtained the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art spread out, the cultivators also started searching for traces of Kang Xinmu from the ancient city. Moya and Tang Xiaoyu were the first to know that Kang Xinmu was not in the ancient city. Different from other people's understanding, the two speculated that Kang Xinmu had been sent out of the ancient city by the distorted space of the battlefield domain. Moya used the degree of distortion in the space to speculate the approximate location of Kang Xinmu. However, Tang Xiaoyu could not use the 10,000 elephants origin superimposition technique. Senior, the space here is a little strange. Tang Xiaoyu could feel a strange force interfering with him, regardless of whether it was the superimposition technique or the overlapping space. Moya carefully sensed this space. Soon, she found traces of the creatures from the other world appearing at the intersection of the distorted space. Moya's beautiful eyes narrowed when she noticed this. She quickly thought of the previous explosion and the appearance of the other side of spacetime. Such a powerful explosion did not produce too much power, so the only explanation was that it was the other side of spacetime. The other side of spacetime was connected to other parallel worlds, and the other world was one of them. Compared to other worlds, the other world was more special. The cultivators of this world could sign contracts with the creatures of the other world through the contract artifact, thereby summoning the contract of the other world to this world. Chapter 5685. Could it be that Kang Xinmu had been drawn into the other world? Moya's beautiful eyes stared at the distorted space, trying to sense the nearby aura. After sensing for a long time, she couldn't sense Kang Xinmu's aura. In other words, there wasn't any aura of Kang Xinmu in the vicinity. The battlefield domain hadn't been broken for a long time. It was reasonable to say that even if Kang Xinmu wanted to leave, there should be some remnants of his aura. However, there wasn't the slightest trace of Kang Xinmu's aura. Not only that, but there wasn't even the slightest trace of a living creature's aura. Senior, do you think that Brother Jiang has left? After Tang Xiaoyu's 10th attempt to use the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique failed, he made a bold guess after searching around. Ever since he was sent out of the battle formation by Kang Xinmu, Tang Xiaoyu had been accompanying Wuxia in the ancient Desolation City and hadn't gone anywhere. They knew that Kang Xinmu was trapped in the battle formation, but they couldn't do anything. They only knew that not long ago, the battlefield domain that had enveloped the ancient Desolation City had inexplicably disappeared. Even the courtyard that was covered by the battle formation had returned to its original appearance. However, there seemed to be a special layer of space in the courtyard that they couldn't break through. At this time, they could finally break through that special layer of space and enter the courtyard, but they couldn't see Kang Xinmu's figure. Maybe. Wuxia hoped that it was as Tang Xiaoyu said. She didn't dare to think about what would happen to Kang Xinmu if he was drawn into the other world. The other world was an extremely dangerous world for anyone in this world. The space here is very special. I feel like it's a phenomenon from the other side of time and space. Brother Jiang might have been transported to another place through the battle formation. In fact, Tang Xiaoyu's first reaction was that he had been transported to another space. Seeing that Senior Wuxia's face didn't look good, he changed his words. Although he didn't say it clearly, both of them were well aware of it. Senior, why don't we go to another ancient city to take a look? Tang Xiaoyu patted his forehead and hurriedly added. Senior, this junior will go nearby to take a look first. After speaking, Tang Xiaoyu turned around and left. Tang Xiaoyu often dealt with people from the Limitless Pavilion, so he had some understanding of Xiaofan Star Devourer. Xiaofan Star Devourer could summon contracted beings from the other world, and Tang Xiaoyu had fought with them before. They were very strong. Once Kang Xinmu was sucked into the netherworld, he would be doomed. The reason why Tang Xiaoyu chose to help Kang Xinmu was that he wanted to see his idol. To him, Emperor Shi was very sacred. She was his idol. In the past, if he had wanted to meet Emperor Shi, he would have been eliminated by the cruel world of cultivation before he could even find Emperor Shi. Now, with great difficulty, he finally had a certain level of ability. Not only had he mastered the art of multiplication, which was an excellent escape technique, but he had also met Kang Xinmu, who might know some clues about Emperor Shi. This was the best opportunity for him to meet his idol. Tang Xiaoyu didn't want to miss this opportunity. It could be said that Tang Xiaoyu only helped Kang Xinmu because he wanted to see his idol, Emperor Shi. Tang Xiaoyu knew that Kang Xinmu's chances of survival were not high, so he could have just left. However, Tang Xiaoyu didn't. He chose to stay and look for Kang Xinmu. He did this because in the battle matrix, Kang Xinmu trusted him. The world of cultivation was cruel. Only the strong could survive, and only the strong could have the right to decide the life and death of the weak. Every cultivator was a competitor, and it was very difficult to find a confidant who could trust each other. In that kind of environment, Kang Xinmu trusted him enough. This made Tang Xiaoyu want to make friends with Kang Xinmu from the bottom of his heart. On the boring and lonely path of cultivation, it was worth it to have someone you could trust, even if you were doomed eternally. Wuxia retracted her gaze and walked around the courtyard. The courtyard looked as if nothing had happened. There were no traces. When she glanced at the distorted space again, she saw that it had finally returned to its normal state. Wuxia bit her lips and her brows were tightly knitted. In the end, she still firmly believed that Kang Xinmu could not be sucked into the other world. Gritting her teeth, she turned around and left the courtyard. As soon as she left, she sensed a large number of strange auras approaching the desolate ancient city's gate. Their speed was so fast that in just a breath's time, they instantly entered the desolate ancient city from a few miles away. Tang Xiaoyu, step back. Wuxia hurriedly shouted. As soon as her voice fell, the crowd surrounded Tang Xiaoyu and Wuxia. Not here? One of them looked at Tang Xiaoyu and Wuxia, then looked behind them. Seeing that Kang Xinmu was not there, he asked doubtfully. At the same time, Kang Xinmu had just stepped out of the strange ancient city and encountered a group of cultivators. Looking at the direction they were heading in, it seemed that they were not in the same direction. After getting closer, Kang Xinmu heard that these people were heading for the 7 devouring demon sealing art. They entered the secret territory from other entrances and followed the clues of the 7 devouring demon sealing art all the way to the desolate ancient city. It just so happened that they heard the rumor that Kang Xinmu had broken the formation and obtained the treasure, so they were looking for Kang Xinmu's whereabouts everywhere. Kang Xinmu roughly glanced at these people. They were not the group of cultivators who entered the desolate ancient city. Seeing this scene, Kang Xinmu sighed. Apart from them, there were 2 types of people who entered the secret territory. The first type followed the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. There were 2 kinds of people in this group. The first kind had a fanatical pursuit of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. They went to the desolate ancient city immediately and ended up being refined into a puppet by the battle formation. The second kind was to wait and see, which was also this group of people. They were clear that there were countless cultivators who came to compete for the 7 devouring demon sealing art. It was bound to lead to bloodshed. Compared to the first kind of people, this kind of people were more suitable to become experts. They were greedy enough, but they could seize the opportunity when they were greedy and not be the first bird to be cannon fodder. The other kind of people scoffed at the 7 devouring demon sealing art. They disdained to participate in the competition for the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Just like Qing Fu and Gu Tianzi, whom they met not long ago. The closer they got to the desolate ancient city, the more cultivators they could see. Although everyone heard that a young man named Kang Xinmu broke the battle formation and obtained the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the desolate ancient city. In fact, not many people had seen Kang Xinmu. Even if Kang Xinmu moved like this, not many people cared. They just thought that he was a cultivator like them who came to compete for the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Half an hour later, Kang Xinmu saw the desolate ancient city. At the same time, he sensed the chaotic aura in the city. It seemed that there were cultivators fighting. The aura was very strange, but one of them was very familiar. It was Emoya. Although Tang Xiaoyu was talking, he was actually secretly casting a spell. He had to send Senior Emoya out of the desolate city. There were many cultivators who were eyeing Emoya covetously. None of them were weak, having the ability of a supreme level 5. However, their opponent was Emoya. It would not be an exaggeration to say that none of the people present were a match for Emoya. What Emoya was really afraid of was the obscure aura at the city gate. Emoya did not know who that person was. Ever since this group of people came in, that aura had been there and had not left until now. Emoya sensed the aura that suddenly attacked her from behind. She easily dodged the sneak attacker's attack. Wu Yun, don't you have any shame? It's fine if you surround a weak girl with such a big commotion, but you still want to sneak attack? Tang Xiaoyu could not take it anymore. After he shouted, the cultivators who were confronting him no longer cared about the fact that Tang Xiaoyu was from the heavenly Yuan Palace. They wanted to use brute force to control the 2 of them. Senior, this junior will cover you. Tang Xiaoyu stepped forward and blocked the cultivator who was attacking him. Soon, Tang Xiaoyu was wrestling with the crowd. This was Emoya's first time seeing Tang Xiaoyu fight. The cultivation that Tang Xiaoyu displayed surprised Emoya. Tang Xiaoyu's supreme divine power cultivation had also reached level 7. This was indeed beyond Emoya's expectations. The ancient city was suddenly in chaos. Kang Xinmu, who had just entered the city, sensed Emoya and Tang Xiaoyu's aura. Just as he was about to head over, he sensed an obscure aura. This aura seemed familiar, but it was also a little strange. Kang Xinmu looked around vigilantly and quickly found the owner of this aura. It was a young man wearing the Limitless Pavilion's disciple uniform. He was sitting at the top of the ancient city's gate like a spectator, sizing up the battle that was happening in the city. When Kang Xinmu looked at the young man also looked over. This person was the disciple of the Limitless Pavilion's great elder, Dan Yuanfei. Like many cultivators, Dan Yuanfei had never seen Kang Xinmu in person. Hence, when he saw Kang Xinmu, he was very indifferent. Kang Xinmu quickly retracted his gaze and dashed in Moya's direction. The moment Kang Xinmu's figure dashed out, Dan Yuanfei sensed the aura around Kang Xinmu's body. Dan Yuanfei's expression changed slightly. His pair of eyes locked tightly on Kang Xinmu's figure. The aura that leaked out from Kang Xinmu's body was very strong. Of course, what really attracted Dan Yuanfei's attention was the other cold aura on Kang Xinmu's body. This kind of dark and cold power made Dan Yuanfei think of Haifan. The aura leaked out from Haifan's summoning contract artifact, Star Eater, was very similar to the aura leaked out from Kang Xinmu. Haifan had followed Gufeng to the ancient city not long ago. Gufeng had already headed to the destination a few days ago. Only Haifan had not caught up. There was another piece of bad news. The specific Heart-Soul Stone that could track Haifan's tracks had shattered. The Heart-Soul Stone contained Haifan's soul consciousness. In short, any changes that happened to the Heart-Soul Stone represented Haifan's encounter. Now that the Heart-Soul Stone had shattered, it indicated that Haifan was in danger. Dan Yuanfei released his soul consciousness and locked onto Kang Xinmu's movements. Kang Xinmu had already arrived in front of Moya and stopped the cultivators who wanted to attack Moya. "Senior, sorry to keep you waiting." Kang Xinmu forcefully repelled the cultivators who were charging at him and walked towards Moya. Moya's beautiful eyes curved and contained a faint smile. She did not care about the people present. Her slender jade-like hand pressed on Kang Xinmu's shoulder and used her divine power to check on Kang Xinmu's physical condition. Kang Xinmu keenly sensed that the supreme sacred ice domain hidden in his soul consciousness had condensed and formed a boundary around his soul consciousness. Moya only wanted to check on Kang Xinmu's physical condition. Seeing that Kang Xinmu was not injured, she quickly withdrew her power. "The timing is just right." Moya smiled gently. He could not help but sigh. After not seeing Kang Xinmu for some time, his cultivation seemed to have improved a lot. "Then let's go." Tang Xiaoyu saw that Kang Xinmu had arrived and did not continue fighting. Chapter 5687. Kang Xinmu. Dan Yuanfei recognized Kang Xinmu. At the same time, many cultivators gathered in the city also focused on Kang Xinmu. This person was their target, Kang Xinmu. "That's Kang Xinmu, everyone attack." Someone shouted, and the people who were in a deadlock suddenly moved. Facing the attacks of the crowd, Kang Xinmu casually used his supreme dragon martial skill, and easily repelled all the cultivators who were blocking his way. He even comprehended a new supreme dragon martial skill in the process of fighting. Ever since he stepped into the supreme level, the supreme dragon martial skill that Kang Xinmu could use was very simple, and it was derived from his original dragon martial skill. In the process of fighting, Kang Xinmu comprehended a new supreme dragon martial skill. Before stepping into the supreme level, the dragon martial skill was not useless, it was just that the method of derivation was wrong. Since it could derive a type of supreme dragon martial skill, it could derive even more supreme dragon martial skills. Kang Xinmu used supreme divine power to derive the original dragon martial skill into supreme dragon martial skill. The deterrence of the supreme dragon martial technique was much stronger than the original dragon martial technique. More importantly, supreme dragon martial skill could contend with supreme divine power, which was something that the original dragon martial skill could not compare to. No matter how strong a dragon martial skill was, it could not contend with supreme divine power, and against a supreme-level cultivator, it was useless. Tang Xiaoyu's methods were not inferior to Kang Xinmu's. The two of them repelled the surrounding cultivators and rushed out of the desolate ancient city. Kang Xinmu always paid attention to Emoya. He would not allow Emoya to suffer any harm. At the entrance of the desolate ancient city, unknowingly, a large number of cultivators had gathered, each of them staring at the desolate ancient city. Some of the cultivators came for the fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. After the trouble in the desolate ancient city, General Leng Changhong was defeated, they rushed over. There were also cultivators who were purely passers-by. Their real goal was the Star Atlas Lock. The Star Map Lock was a very special magic tool. Not only could it contain living creatures, but it could also be used by cultivators for cultivation. This was because the Star Atlas Lock itself was a spatial magic tool. In a sense, the Star Map Lock was equivalent to a contract summoning artifact. It had a certain connection with the complete 8-god star chart. The main goal of the Outer Realm sects, including the Heaven Origin Palace and the Everlasting Pavilion, was the Star Map Lock. The ancestor who opened up the Outer Realm once left behind a mysterious text, which was later deciphered by the Great Elder of the Everlasting Pavilion. The general idea was that one day, a moving mystic realm would appear in the Outer Realm. At that time, the situation in the Outer Realm would undergo a historic change. Many elders believed that the Outer Realm was about to face an unknown calamity with regards to the general gist of these words. In the past 100 years, mysterious beings had appeared in the Outer Realm several times. In addition, there seemed to be some turmoil in the Other Realm. The forbidden lands of the Outer Realm could lead to the Other Realm. They all guessed that the races of the Other Realm would use the forbidden lands to head to the Outer Realm. The Star Map Lock had 9 locks, which represented 9 talismans. When the 9 talismans of the Star Map Lock were all activated, it could suck in the invading creatures of the Outer Realm. Whether it was the races of the Other Realm or other species, they could all be absorbed. The various sects were well aware of the function of the Star Map Lock, but they were unwilling to confess it to each other. They all wanted to use it for themselves. Only by grasping the initiative would one be able to stand as the most absolute overlord in the Outworld realm. Moreover, the various sects knew that the Star Map Lock was in this moving mystic realm. Thus, the various sects sent people to search for clues about the Star Map Lock. The 4 great sects, the Heaven Origin Palace, the Everlasting Pavilion, the Firmament Sect, and the Qing family, all wanted to become the overlord of the Outer Realm. This time, they even sent their outstanding disciples to search for the Star Map Lock. As everyone knew, the sealed mystic realm was constantly moving. Because of the constant movement of the mystic realm, the spatial layout of the mystic realm had also changed. After the news of Kang Xinmu deciphering the ancient desolate city's formation spread, the location of the Star Map Lock was basically confirmed. The Star Map Lock existed in the deeper parts of the mystic realm, which meant that it was further away from the exit. The sealed mystic realm had more than one entrance. Every entrance would appear, but there was only one exit. After all the entrances were closed, the exit would appear. The exit would only exist for 3 days before it would close again. At that time, the mystic realm would continue to move to the next plane before the exit would open again. In principle, the time to search for the Star Map Lock was very tight, so there couldn't be any mistakes. However, the people of the 4 great sects knew that there were still a few entrances to the mystic realm that had not closed. If the entrances were not completely closed, the exits would naturally not open. In this way, he had more than enough time. When they passed by the ancient desolate city, they all slowed down their pace and watched from afar with the attitude of watching a show. Of course, The most important thing was that in order to reach the location of the star map lock, they had to pass through the ancient desolate city. There was more than one exit in the ancient desolate city. There was another exit, which was like a barrier. Only after passing through that door would they truly enter the sealed mystic realm. As for the star map lock, Kang Xinmu didn't know much about it. He only knew that with the star map lock, he could easily carry the heart-devouring blood centipede. Ever since they entered the mystic realm, there had been no news of Ao Tong's puppet. Kang Xinmu also planned to find Ao Tong's puppet after solving the matter in the ancient desolate city. Of course, they had to solve the problem in front of them first. Tang Xiaoyu, you're not dead yet? At this moment, a sharp voice came from the left side of the crowd. Then, a beautiful figure wearing the everlasting pavilion's uniform came over. It was Gu Feng. As soon as Gu Feng appeared, her eyes fell on Tang Xiaoyu. What made her happy was that Kang Xinmu, who had the great demon seal of 10 directions, was also here. Gu Feng wasn't interested in the 7 devouring demon seal, but she was interested in the great demon seal of 10 directions. With the great demon seal of 10 directions, she could inherit the sex inheritance. People like you who only know how to use brute force are still alive. How could I, who has an invincible movement technique, die? Tang Xiaoyu curled his lips and said lightly. He gestured for Kang Xinmu and Amoya to leave from the back. Kang Xinmu understood. He knew that staying here would only attract more trouble, so he left with Amoya. Hey, stop right there. Gu Feng was still thinking about Kang Xinmu's great demon seal of 10 directions. Naturally, she wouldn't let go of Kang Xinmu. He leaped forward, but was stopped by Tang Xiaoyu. Your movement technique is not good enough. Tang Xiaoyu mocked Gu Feng mercilessly. You should go back and practice more before coming here to learn how to dig for treasures. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. Gu Feng swung her lily-white hand, and a blood mark appeared out of nowhere. She swung it at Tang Xiaoyu. Chapter 56-88. Tang Xiaoyu's body flew straight out, brushing past Dan Yuanfei, and fell heavily on the walls of the ancient desolate city. A large part of the city wall collapsed instantly, and Tang Xiaoyu flew into the ancient desolate city. Dan Yuanfei? When Tang Xiaoyu saw Dan Yuanfei, he suddenly had an idea. Since Dan Yuanfei appeared in the ancient desolate city, it could only mean that the location of the star map lock had been confirmed. Tang Xiaoyu originally planned to find Kang Xinmu and then slowly look for clues about the star map lock. Now, it seemed that he didn't need to look for clues anymore. Without thinking, he entered the depths of the ancient desolate city. Dan Yuanfei glanced at Tang Xiaoyu, then her gaze fell on Gu Feng, who was chasing after Dan Yuanfei. At this moment, Gu Feng was very unhappy. It wasn't easy to get the 10-directional devil seal, but Tang Xiaoyu, this bastard, actually messed it up. What was even more hateful was that Kang Xinmu had disappeared without a trace. Tang Xiaoyu came and went without a trace by relying on the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique. Even so, with Tang Xiaoyu's level, using the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique was bound to leave traces. How did Kang Xinmu manage to come and go without a trace? Kang Xinmu and Amoya had already left the entrance of the ancient desolate city. However, during this process, Kang Xinmu discovered a strange thing about the ancient desolate city. The aura of the ancient desolate city seemed to be different from the outside world. The entire ancient desolate city was more like a barrier. To be precise, it was more like a special space. The seal was a moving secret realm. When the secret realm moved, it would inevitably cause a certain change in the space. The spatial distortions were basically concentrated in the ancient desolate city, causing the space around the ancient desolate city to be different from the ordinary space. It could be said that the ancient desolate city was equivalent to another secret realm within a secret realm. Senior Amoya, I sense that there is something wrong with the space of this ancient city. Should we go and take a look? Kang Shinmu pointed to an approximate location. Amoya looked in the direction of Kang Shinmu's gesture. Her beautiful eyes slightly narrowed, and a faint white halo flashed in them. The strange things in the space could be seen clearly. Amoya gently nodded her head. Actually, Amoya had a question in her heart. During this time, there were more and more cultivators gathering around the ancient desolate city, but most of them weren't here for the fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. Could it be that this desolate ancient city had other mysteries? What Amoya really cared about was that she had heard about the Star Atlas lock when Kang Shinmu had been trapped in the array formation. Could it be that the secret of the Star Atlas lock lies in the ancient desolation city? The two of them flew in the direction of the spatial distortion. By the way, Kang Shinmu, where have you been these days? Amoya was still unable to let go of this matter, and she hesitated for a moment before asking. The other world was an extremely dangerous world, at least for the current Kang Shinmu, it was very dangerous. Senior, I wonder if you've heard of the other world? Kang Shinmu did not intend to hide anything from Amoya, so he told her everything that had happened on the battlefield. He included the fact that Leng Zhanghong's armor was a contract artifact that could summon creatures from the other world, and that Leng Zhanghong's life force was maintained by the flame of undead spirits. As for the words that Leng Zhanghong had said before he disappeared, it was worth Kang Shinmu to ponder over. The most important thing right now was to become stronger. Amoya listened to Kang Shinmu's narration, and her heart was filled with sweat. The reason why I was able to escape so quickly is naturally because of Senior's help. Jiang Shenwu smiled, calming Amoya's emotions. Amoya was slightly stunned when she heard this, and then she smiled gently. There's one more thing. When Kang Shinmu caught a glimpse of the everlasting pavilion's disciple not far away, he suddenly thought of the 8-god star plate. He generously took out the 8-god star plate. Isn't this the artifact of the everlasting pavilion's disciple? Amoya blinked her beautiful eyes in confusion. It's the artifact of the everlasting pavilion's disciple, Star Devourer. Kang Shinmu handed the 8-god star plate to Amoya. Just as Amoya was about to take the 8-god star plate, she felt a powerful force from it, along with a burning sensation. What was strange was that there was also a sense of coldness in this burning sensation. Otherwise, Amoya's hand would have been burned by the divine power protecting her. Kang Shinmu also quickly noticed this and hurriedly took back the 8-god star plate. Senior, is your hand all right? Kang Shinmu was very confused. It's fine, Amoya said gently. Then, a pair of beautiful eyes fell on the 8-god star plate. This is, the 8-god star plate? Amoya had seen Haifan use Star Devour before, but she could not tell what it was. Now that she saw it in Kang Shinmu's hands, she realized that Star Devour was actually the 8-god star plate. She could not help but secretly sigh at the strength of the everlasting pavilion. They actually had the 8-god star plate. Yes, it's the 8-god star plate. Kang Shinmu looked at the 8-god star plate and realized that the flame of undead spirits had unknowingly possessed the 8-god star plate and left a mark on it. Kang Shinmu circulated his power and sensed the flame of undead spirits. The flame of undead spirits still existed in the extreme 10 devil seal. When it sensed the flame of undead spirits, the mark on the 8-god star plate would flash. Kang Shinmu also realized that he could summon the flame of undead spirits through the mark on the 8-god star plate. He remembered that he had absorbed 9 types of supreme divine power in the blood mist in the dragon demon cave. First, he comprehended the power of the supreme divine fire, then the power of the supreme mysterious iron. After comprehending these 2 supreme divine powers, it was equivalent to these 2 supreme divine powers belonging to Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu could then use these 2 supreme divine powers as he pleased. As for the remaining 7 supreme divine powers, Kang Shinmu was still unable to comprehend them, so he could not accurately sense their existence. He could only vaguely sense the existence of the 7 supreme divine powers in the extreme 10 devil seal. The situation with the flame of undead spirits was an accident. Originally, he thought that he could only use the extreme 10 devil seal to suppress the flame of undead spirits. He did not expect that the 8 god star plate could also suppress it. From the looks of it, the flame of undead spirits had also become one of the contracted beings of the 8 god star plate. Even so, Kang Shinmu did not dare to release the main body of the flame of undead spirits from the extreme 10 devil seal. If something were to happen, everything he had done before would be in vain. It's the 8 god star plate, but it seems to be lacking a foundation. Moya tilted her head and saw the flaws of the 8 god star plate. Yes, when I got it, it was lacking a foundation. My guess is that if I want to find the foundation of the 8 god star plate, I will need to go to the outer domain. Xiaofan was a member of the everlasting pavilion in the outer domain. The clues of the 8 god star plate's foundation could only be found from the origin of the 8 god star plate. The 8 god star plate is a type of summoning magical tool. Apart from being able to form a contract with a living being, there is still a part of the foundation hidden within. Chapter 5689. It's okay. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Kang Shinmu smiled casually. Yeah. Moya's gentle smile was tinged with helplessness. Now that Kang Shinmu had the 8 god star plate, Xiaofan, the disciple of Wuxia Pavilion, was most likely dead. Whether Xiaofan was killed by Kang Shinmu or not, in the eyes of outsiders, Kang Shinmu was the guilty one. However, before the opportunity comes, there may be a big problem, Kang Shinmu said resentfully. Kang Shinmu didn't need to say it. Moya had already expected it. The big problem was naturally the Wuxia Pavilion. Let's go and take a look, Moya said softly. Okay. Kang Shinmu and Moya were outside the ancient wilderness ancient city. The two of them sensed the strangeness of the ancient wilderness ancient city. They quickly flew in the direction of the distortion of space. At the same time, Tang Xiaoyu flew in the direction of the distortion of space in the ancient wilderness ancient city. Tang Xiaoyu's perception of the distortion of space was not very strong. He only noticed it when he used the manifestation essence superposition technique. The cultivators gathered in the ancient wilderness ancient city also flew into the city one after another. Of course, some cultivators still chose to wait and see, or planned to enter the secret zone in the ancient wilderness ancient city from outside the city. In a corner of the ancient wilderness ancient city, Grasshopper stood on a tall pavilion and coldly glanced at the people who were heading to the ancient wilderness ancient city. He glanced at the many cultivators outside the city and finally fixed his eyes on Kang Shinmu and Moya. Grasshopper glanced at Kang Shinmu and basically understood Kang Shinmu's current cultivation situation. He was a little surprised. When he first met Kang Shinmu's supreme divine power was only at level 6. After obtaining the 2 fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing technique, it reached level 7 and showed signs of breaking through to level 8. No wonder Moya chose to come here with Kang Shinmu. The inheritor of divine power had a good eye. At the very least, the person he had chosen wasn't lacking in talent. However, with the 8th level of supreme divine power, not to mention facing the Wuxia Pavilion in the outer domain, he might not even be able to walk out of the sealed secret realm. Qing Fu withdrew her gaze and descended. Like an ordinary cultivator, she slowly walked in the direction of the crowd of cultivators. The enchantment that enveloped the ancient desolate city was broken because of General Leng Changhong's death. As the barrier disappeared, the true appearance of the ancient desolate city was revealed. The layout of the ancient desolation city was complicated. Whether it was the area it occupied or the scenery it displayed, it was much more spectacular than before. Some people guessed that this was the real desolate ancient city. After all, the ancient desolate city itself was equivalent to a secret realm. The ancient desolate city that appeared before everyone's eyes was only the graveyard of General Leng Changhong. Such speculation was not groundless. The perished, the puppets in the city, the battle formations, and many other existences were more like the graveyard of Leng Changhong's generals. Of course, whether or not these powerful existences existed to protect Leng Changhong's graveyard was only the speculation of the major cultivators. There was only one thing that only Kong Xinmu could be sure of. Leng Changhong wholeheartedly wanted to destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art. In order to destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art, Leng Changhong did not hesitate to pay any price. A generation of generals paid such a huge price to destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art, which undoubtedly added a mysterious color to the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The most important thing was the spirit of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, Feng Ling. In addition, Feng Ling could summon the divine light from a distance. This was what Kong Xinmu was afraid of. Only by finding the complete 8-god star plate could he completely control the 8-god star plate. Before that, he still needed a star map lock. Kong Xinmu and Moya were outside the ancient desolate city. Along the walls of the ancient desolate city, they flew to the place where the space was distorted. The two of them had a general understanding of the area of the ancient desolate city. The ancient desolate city was much larger than they had imagined. The two of them spent a total of 4 hours before they arrived at the place where they sensed. And this place did not seem to be the end of the city wall. Looking along the city wall, it seemed that there was still a long way to go. Senior, I feel that this place is like a unique space. Kong Xinmu's perception was much stronger than before. In addition to the perception of the supreme soul power, he felt that this small space they were in was a unique space. In this small space, there must be a place similar to a door that could be used to enter the place where the cultivators wanted to go. The ancient desolate city was just an ordinary ancient city. The reason why it attracted so many cultivators was because of the existence of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. And the cultivators who came for the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment were all buried in Leng Changhong's battle formation. The cultivators who came later were not here for the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. Their goal was most likely the same as Tang Xiaoyu and Gu Feng. After Kong Xinmu broke through the battlefield domain, he appeared in an unfamiliar ancient city and heard about the star map lock. Presumably, the people who came here were here for the star map lock. Senior, you said that the star map lock can contain the heart-devouring blood centipede, right? Thinking of the star map lock, Kong Xinmu asked. Yes, it can contain the heart-devouring blood centipede. Moya's beautiful eyes blinked. She seemed to have thought of something and said softly. In principle, the heart-devouring blood centipede also has vitality. The star map lock can contain the heart-devouring blood centipede, which is equivalent to being able to contain any living creature with vitality. The two of them sized up this small space as they spoke. After searching for a while, they suddenly found that they were trapped in this small space that could contain 5 people. There was nothing unusual around the space, but they could not take a step out. Is the star map lock appearing? Kong Xinmu said casually. It should be. Moya nodded. Suddenly, Moya seemed to have thought of something and her beautiful eyes focused. Kong Xinmu. She called out to Kong Xinmu. Kong Xinmu immediately understood. Senior, don't worry. I've found the exit to leave this place. Kong Xinmu did not hold back and released his supreme soul power. He had found the way out of this small space. As long as he flew off the ground, he could use the power of space to leave this place. The strange thing about them being trapped here was the ground under their feet. The space was distorted because of the power from underground. The place where they were standing happened to be on the passage to the secret realm. Since the entrance to the secret realm in the desolate ancient city had been opened, the passage also opened. Someone is coming. Moya's beautiful eyes focused, glancing at a place on the city wall. A moment ago, it was still the city wall. As soon as Moya's voice fell, the city wall disappeared, revealing the inside of the desolate ancient city. The layout of the city was somewhat familiar to Kang Xinmu. It was not much different from the ancient city he had stayed in before. Don't just stand there. Let's go. Chapter 5690. Senior, this is the entrance. It's not the exit. Kang Xinmu reacted in time. Just now, Moya suddenly called out to Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu thought that Moya did not want to get involved and wanted to leave this place. It was not easy to find the exit. Moya actually took the initiative to enter the secret realm. It truly caused Jiang Shenwu to be unable to recover from his shock. Okay. Moya said gently. Kang Xinmu was stunned at first, but then he followed Moya. He understood what Moya meant. Since they were already here, they had to give it their all. After Kang Xinmu and Moya entered the entrance, a large number of cultivators gathered. There was one person who arrived at the entrance one step ahead of the rest. It was Tang Xiaoyu. Tang Xiaoyu did not even look at him as he entered the secret realm. When he first came to the sealed secret realm, he had a very clear purpose. He would not interfere with the 7 devouring demon sealing arts remnant. Even if he obtained it by chance, he would not accept it. At this time, the secret realm in the desolate ancient city had opened. Tang Xiaoyu adhered to the principle of first come, first served, and did not hesitate at all. The entrance is open. Someone shouted loudly. However, a large number of cultivators gathered at the entrance. They maintained a certain distance from the entrance, but no one went forward. The cultivators who came here all had level 6 or even higher supreme divine power cultivation base. Everyone wanted to obtain the treasures in the secret realm, but they were clear about the dangers in the secret realm. Thus, no one was willing to be the first to stand out. Gufeng followed Tang Xiaoyu's traces all the way here. After searching for a while in the crowd, she did not find Tang Xiaoyu's aura. Thus, she also entered the entrance. This action startled Dan Yuanfei. Dan Yuanfei, who followed the crowd, frowned. He did not care about anything else and followed Gufeng's footsteps. Seeing that the Everlasting Pavilion's disciples had entered the secret realm, the cultivators at the back also gathered at the entrance one after another. At the entrance of the secret realm, Kang Xinmu and Moya were the first to enter. Indeed, it did not go smoothly. Not only were there many entrances, but there was also a faint layer of mysterious white mist floating in them. There was a cold feeling in the white mist. At first, Kang Xinmu thought that it was the Supreme Holy Ice Domain. However, he soon realized that the Supreme Holy Ice Domain was actually repelling this power. If he wanted to know what kind of power this was, he could only devour it directly. Space, rules. Just as Kang Xinmu was about to devour the mysterious white mist, he suddenly heard Moya speak. Space law? Kang Xinmu was astonished. This white fog was actually the law of space. Even Kang Xinmu found it hard to believe that it was the power of space, let alone the laws of space. Ever since Kang Xinmu stepped into the supreme level, he had seen all sorts of godly powers, but he had never come into contact with the power of space. More accurately, it was the supreme power of space. There was still a certain gap between the supreme spatial energy and the spatial energy. Before a cultivator stepped into the supreme stage, even if they were at the peak of the supreme god stage, the power of space they grasped was just pure space power. They could use the power of space to fight, or shrink the ground to inches, and many other methods. In essence, they were just using the power of space to make use of the power of space for a short period of time. After stepping into the supreme stage and grasping the supreme power of space, they could seize the power of space. In essence, it was taking away the power of space, or even the power to create space. Of course, it did not mean that with the supreme power of space, one could take away the power of space or create the power of space. In order to reach this level, one needed to have a strong understanding of the supreme power of space. Supreme cultivators who had reached the 6th level of the supreme power of space could seize the power of space and make it their own power. They could then use the corresponding supreme martial skills. Supreme cultivators who had mastered the 9th level of the supreme power of space could create the power of space. The power to create space was equivalent to opening up an independent space, similar to the existence of a secret realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that such an existence could instantly kill all the cultivators who came here. They had not even met a supreme cultivator who had the supreme power of space, let alone seen the rule of space. The rule of space was the power that could only be controlled by someone who had reached the 10th level of the supreme power of space and understood the rule of space. Although the fog in the passage was thin, it was too thick to say that it was the rule of space. Like Kong Shinmu, Moya was very surprised. Her beautiful eyes stared at the white fog that floated in front of her from time to time. Moya's supreme power was special. Although she had not stepped into the door of the rule of space, she could sense part of the rule of space. Of course, it was related to the second cultivation method that Moya cultivated. Moya was also very surprised to see the rule of space here. She would not be so surprised if she only saw the supreme power of space. Moya released her power to sense again. It's the natural power of the supreme power of space, Moya said softly after sensing again. The natural power of the supreme power of space was the supreme power of space that had not been understood or controlled. It was like the spirit qi that existed in the air. Take Kong Shinmu for example. The first type of supreme power that Kong Shinmu had comprehended was the power of the supreme power of fire. The power of the supreme power of fire that he had comprehended came from one of the 9 types of supreme power of the bloody fog in the dragon demon cave. Before Kong Shinmu had devoured the power of the supreme power of fire, the power of the supreme power of fire existed in the bloody fog. Under such circumstances, the power of the supreme power of fire was the power of nature. Kong Shinmu had devoured the bloody fog and comprehended the power of the supreme power of fire. Therefore, the power of the supreme power of fire belonged to Kong Shinmu as a cultivator and belonged to Kong Shinmu. Only the power of the supreme power of fire in the bloody fog was controlled by Kong Shinmu. There was still the power of the supreme power of fire in other places. The power of the supreme power of fire that existed in other places was comprehended by the cultivator and belonged to the cultivator. Cultivators who had mastered the power of the supreme power of fire could control all the flames in the world like Kong Shinmu. The power of the supreme power of fire that had not been comprehended by the cultivator was still the power of nature. From a certain point of view, the supreme power that belonged to the power of nature was a type of cultivation element. To the cultivators of the supreme power, the majority of the cultivation elements were not controlled by one person, but by multiple people. Simply put, one type of cultivation element could be comprehended and controlled by different cultivators at the same time. Of course, this was not the case for all cultivation elements. There were also some cultivation elements that could not be comprehended and controlled by multiple cultivators. Currently, all the cultivation elements that Kong Shinmu had come into contact with were multiple cultivation elements. Hearing this, Kong Shinmu tried to sense the misty white fog in front of him. Chapter 5691. This supreme spatial power of nature contains part of the laws of space, Moya said gently. That's right. Kong Shinmu's understanding of the laws wasn't comprehensive. He had to rely on the 7 devouring demon sealing art to identify the power of the laws. The power that the 7 devouring demon sealing art could devour was definitely the power of the laws. The power that the 7 devouring demon sealing art rejected was definitely not the power of the laws. With a thought, Kang Shinmu activated his devouring power. Now that his devouring power had been refined by the 7 devouring demon sealing art, the power it could devour was far from what it used to be. Kang Shinmu, wait a moment. Mo Ya knew that Kang Shinmu's strength had increased tremendously after the battle in the battle formation. However, the power in front of him was still the supreme spatial force and the laws of space. Although the power of the laws of space was weak, the laws weren't something that Kang Shinmu could control at the moment. Senior, my devouring power has improved and can devour these powers. Kang Shinmu smiled. Every cultivator wanted to obtain great power. On the path of cultivation, it was normal to take risks. Most of the time, they would be risking their lives to cultivate. Mo Ya didn't say anything else and just released her divine power. Once Kang Shinmu made any mistakes during the devouring process, she would stop Kang Shinmu from continuing to devour these powers. Kang Shinmu activated his devouring power. His devouring power was like a prey that smelled food. It instantly swept out and soon covered the many forks in the road. After the devouring power covered the floating white mist, Kang Shinmu could clearly feel the supreme spatial force. The reason why this passage looked so complicated was because of the supreme spatial force's nature power. The supreme spatial force's nature power that existed in this passage hadn't been comprehended by any cultivator. It had existed here since the birth of the mystic realm. After a long time, the supreme spatial force had divided this passage into countless passages. As long as he absorbed the supreme spatial force's nature power floating here, he would be able to see the correct passage. Kang Shinmu increased his devouring speed. Kang Shinmu quickly finished devouring the natural force of space. After devouring it, Kang Shinmu realized that his supreme spatial powers were unable to enter the extreme 10-directional devil seal. In this way, if he couldn't comprehend and control the supreme spatial energy that was being devoured, it could only exist in the devouring power. Moreover, the devouring power could not accommodate the supreme spatial energy all the time. Kang Shinmu could clearly feel that the supreme spatial energy that had been devoured was slowly dissipating. As time passed, the supreme space force of nature would definitely run out. What Kang Shinmu couldn't understand was that the great 10-directional devil seal couldn't contain the supreme power of space and nature. The great 10-directional devil seal could even contain 9 types of supreme god powers, and those 9 types of supreme god powers were very heterogeneous. The 10-directional devil extreme seal could contain all kinds of supreme divine powers, but it couldn't contain the supreme spatial power that had already been confirmed. Senior, the supreme spatial power can't be comprehended and controlled by multiple cultivators, right? Kang Shinmu thought for a moment and asked. At the same time, he sensed the supreme space force's nature power that existed in the devouring power. As this supreme spatial power hadn't been comprehended yet, it was very flexible and couldn't be confined by the devouring power. Most importantly, the devouring power couldn't devour and refine the supreme spatial power. Even if the devouring power couldn't completely refine ordinary supreme god powers, it could still refine part of the power. But when it came to the supreme spatial power, not only couldn't it be refined, but it was also dissipating. Seems like it. Mo Ya wasn't very sure about this. Mo Ya sensed the supreme spatial power that floated around Kang Shinmu and realized that it was still the power of nature and didn't belong to Kang Shinmu. The power of nature that condensed around Kang Shinmu was more concentrated, and Mo Ya sensed the space rule within it. Kang Shinmu, I remember that the 7 devouring demon sealing art can devour the power of laws. Try and see if you can devour these laws, Mo Ya said. Kang Shinmu listened to Mo Ya's words very seriously. He was very sure that Mo Ya was talking about these laws, and not the power of laws. Laws and the power of laws didn't sound very different, but the difference in essence was like heaven and earth. Laws were also a kind of power, similar to the supreme god powers of supreme cultivators. Every cultivator who stepped into the door of rules could condense the laws that existed in space and comprehend the power of laws. The power of laws that one could comprehend depended on one's own supreme god powers and supreme god powers. Fundamentally speaking, the power of laws that a cultivator could control was the talent that the cultivator awakened at the beginning. Laws were equivalent to a cultivator's talent. When a cultivator awakened different talents, they could step into the door of cultivation. The power of laws was equivalent to talent. Condensing and refining the laws, and gradually comprehending the power for one's own use, was the power of laws. The supreme natural power of space that floated in these passageways contained only nomological power, not spatial nomological power. When a supreme cultivator's supreme divine power reaches the 9th level, the supreme divine power will have a qualitative breakthrough. When supreme god powers were infinitely close to the 10th level, they would have the opportunity to sense the laws, pry into the door of rules, and step into the realm of laws. Some cultivators with great talent and high comprehension could sense the laws at the 8th level of supreme god powers. The elder of the Fu Shui tribe who had a conflict with Kong Shinmu was such a cultivator. At that time, his supreme god powers had reached the 8th level. Not only did he grasp the laws, but he could also control the power of laws. He was indeed very strong. Now, Kong Shinmu's power of supreme god fire had successfully broken through the 7th level and was about to break through to the 8th level. Controlling a certain amount of laws shouldn't be a problem. In theory, that was the case, but Kong Shinmu soon discovered a flaw. His power of supreme god fire had reached the 8th level, not the power of space. Devouring the laws was most likely useless. Logically speaking, the 7 devouring demon sealing art should be able to devour these laws. Although these laws belong to the scope of the power of space, it should be able to devour them. Moya's beautiful eyes stared at the faint mist floating around Kong Shinmu. Although Kong Shinmu couldn't absorb the power of nature from the power of space, it still condensed around Kong Shinmu and didn't dissipate. This was enough to prove that Kong Shinmu definitely had some kind of power that could absorb the power of space. Kong Shinmu, try it, Moya said gently. I'll try it now. Kong Shinmu had been thinking about why the extreme 10-directional devil seal couldn't absorb the power of nature from the power of space. He didn't notice the power of nature that had been condensing around him. He activated the 7 devouring demon sealing art. This was the first time Kong Shinmu had actively activated the 7 devouring demon sealing art after breaking Leng Zhanghong's battlefield domain. This time, Kong Shinmu didn't see Feng Ling. Of course, Feng Ling didn't intend to show himself. After the 7 devouring demon sealing art was activated, the mark on the seal, which was the mark that Feng Ling had previously possessed, suddenly lit up. However, the light on the mark was much dimmer than before. It could even be said that the mark wasn't complete, with only 2 strokes lit up. Chapter 5692. The moment the 7 devouring demon sealing art was activated, the laws that existed in the supreme space force and nature force reacted. Not long after, the laws were completely absorbed by the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The 7 devouring demon sealing art mainly advanced by devouring laws. Not long ago, it devoured the laws of the water tribe's elder and a small amount of laws in the battle formation. Even so, the 7 devouring demon sealing art still showed no signs of advancing. The laws in the supreme space force were also negligible, so it was impossible for it to advance. However, what surprised Kong Shinmu was, the 7 devouring demon sealing art had only devoured a small amount of the laws in the supreme space force and nature force, but it actually showed signs of advancing. Kong Shinmu clearly felt the changes in the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The 2 strokes on the 7 devouring demon sealing art completely lit up. The first level of the 7 devouring demon sealing art had reached the peak. The 7 devouring demon sealing art mainly advanced by devouring laws, and it was a kind of art in itself. Now that the first level was completed, Kang Xinmu finally understood the essence of the first level of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The first level of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was a kind of power that strengthened one's soul and consciousness. To Kang Xinmu, the most obvious point of the 7 devouring demon sealing art's power was the qualitative change of the devouring power. Correspondingly, the power of his devouring power had increased again. Kang Xinmu had a vague feeling that the devouring power had reached an omnipotent level. With the strengthening of the devouring power, the supreme space force floating around him was once again devoured by the devouring power. The 10-directional devil extreme seal was still unable to absorb the supreme space force, but the devouring power could absorb the supreme space force. Unfortunately, after absorbing the supreme space force, the devouring power could not devour anything else. After weighing the pros and cons, Kang Xinmu still chose to devour the supreme space force floating in the passage. In a few breaths' time, Kang Xinmu completely devoured the supreme space force and nature force floating in the passage. Kang Xinmu retracted the devouring power. No aura leaked out this time. Mo yet sensed the situation around Kang Xinmu's body, but she didn't notice any abnormalities, nor did she notice any leakage of supreme spatial energy. Looks like the devouring power has been strengthened. Kang Xinmu sighed. After Kang Xinmu devoured the supreme power of space and natural power in the tunnel did not return to its original state. It was still as complicated as before. Not only that, but my guess is also wrong. Kang Xinmu supported his forehead with one hand. He had thought that the tunnel would return to its original state after devouring the supreme force of nature floating in the tunnel. Reality slapped him hard in the face. Although the passageways here are complicated, no matter which passageway, they will eventually converge together. The only difference from the correct passageway is that you will encounter some trouble at the other passageways, Mo Yet said gently. Kang Xinmu also understood this logic. Just as Senior Moya had said, he would encounter trouble in the other passages. He also didn't want Moya to go through unnecessary trouble with him. Suddenly, there was a wail from not far away. What the hell is this place? Why can't we go any further? The familiar wail made Kang Xinmu and Moya unable to restrain their laughter. Although Tang Xiaoyu was a carefree person, his comprehension ability was extremely strong. This could be seen from the 10,000 elephant essence superposition technique that he comprehended in the battle formation. Including the battle with the cultivators in the ancient desolation ancient city, the supreme martial skill that he displayed was very strong. Not long ago, Tang Xiaoyu covered them to leave the ancient desolation ancient city. Kang Xinmu thought that Tang Xiaoyu would use the 10,000 elephant essence superposition technique to leave the ancient desolation ancient city. He didn't expect Tang Xiaoyu to come here. From the looks of it, Tang Xiaoyu's goal was most likely in this mystic realm. Senior. I know. Moya understood Kang Xinmu's thoughts. When Kang Xinmu called her, she knew what Kang Xinmu wanted to say. She smiled gently. Kang Xinmu remembered Tang Xiaoyu's kindness. After identifying the direction of Tang Xiaoyu's voice, he looked for the passage that Tang Xiaoyu might be in. The two of them walked quickly. Kang Xinmu and Moya left. After a few breaths, Gufeng followed closely behind and entered the passage. This bastard. Gufeng was now very unhappy. Originally, she was about to get the extreme 10-directional devil seal, but she was tricked by Tang Xiaoyu. Since entering the mystic realm, Tang Xiaoyu had repeatedly ruined her plans. This time, she must kill Tang Xiaoyu in the mystic realm. Tang Xiaoyu, who was in the passage, finally found a foothold after falling for a few dozen feet. As soon as he stood firm, he sneezed and faintly felt a chill on his back. What the hell is that crazy woman trying to do? Tang Xiaoyu rubbed his nose, glanced in the direction of the exit, and quickly retracted his gaze. His eyes narrowed, and he locked on to a direction. His figure moved, and he flew in that direction. After a few breaths, Tang Xiaoyu arrived at the exit. Behind the complicated passageway was a desolate land. As far as the eye could see, the ground was covered with white bones. Gusts of wind blew, sweeping up the yellow sand on the ground. Immediately, the yellow sand filled the sky. However, Tang Xiaoyu easily locked on to a direction and quickly flew in that direction as if he was familiar with it. The time that old man mentioned should be 2 days later. I wonder who will be the benefactor that I will meet? Tang Xiaoyu muttered. In his hand was a white bone that looked like a jade scroll. It was a broken bone. This was the broken bone that Tang Xiaoyu had obtained from the forbidden area of Heavenly Yuan Palace. Tang Xiaoyu had met a mysterious old man in the forbidden area of Heavenly Yuan Palace, and he had obtained this broken bone under the guidance of the old man. However, before he could ask the old man what kind of broken bone it was, what it was used for, or what kind of spell it contained, he had been discovered by the people of Heavenly Yuan Palace. Since then, his life as a fugitive had begun. Until today, some time ago, when Tang Xiaoyu was carrying out an ordinary escape plan, he had accidentally entered this moving mystic realm. While he was surprised, he was also pleasantly surprised. He could search for the clues that the old man had mentioned. At the passage, Kang Xinmu and Mo Ye quickly arrived at the passage that Tang Xiaoyu had been in. The two walked to the end, but they did not see any gaps. From Brother Tang's shout just now, there should be a gap somewhere in this passage. There was a wall in front of them. Kang Xinmu turned his head to look behind him, and the passage was the same as when they had come, without any abnormalities. It should be. Mo Ye was also somewhat puzzled. The two stopped where they were for a moment, and then chose to go to the passage on the left. Just like the passage before, there were no gaps in the passage, but there was no exit. Senior, I feel that the two of us might have gone the wrong way. Kang Xinmu looked at the passage behind him again, and then looked at the only passage that had appeared. Chapter 5693. There should be another way. Mo Ye stared at both sides of the tunnel. She thought for a while and reached out to touch both sides of the tunnel. There was an aura flowing. Kang Xinmu, there are other tunnels on both sides. Mo Ye patted the wall, but there were no changes on both sides of the tunnel. There were no changes on the tunnel, but it didn't mean that there were no other tunnels on both sides. Correspondingly, Mo Ye could still clearly sense that there were abnormalities on both sides. Moreover, there was an extremely cold aura that was rapidly approaching. Senior, over here. Kang Xinmu also sensed the rapidly approaching aura. He had fought with Gufeng previously and experienced the strength of the Scarlet Flame Qilance bloodline power in the blood scar. The rapidly approaching cold aura was the power in the blood scar. The aura approached from the right, and the two of them skimmed to the left. Kang Xinmu used the Supreme Dragon Martial technique and slapped the wall on the left fiercely. There were still no changes on the wall on the left. The aura from the right was getting closer and closer. Kang Xinmu suddenly had an idea. He put away the Supreme Dragon Martial technique that he was about to use and used the power of the soul. The moment he released the power of the soul, he gathered it and swept it towards the wall on the left. Kang Xinmu could clearly sense that his power of the soul easily passed through the wall and entered the other side. On the other side of the wall was a new tunnel. It was different from the tunnel that they were in. There were several tunnels at the same time in the new tunnel. To confirm his guess, Kang Xinmu put away the power of the soul and released the power of the Supreme Divine Fire. He could still sense the tunnel. In this short period of time, Kong Shinmu also released the power of the Supreme Meteoric Iron and the power of the Supreme Sacred Land. Unfortunately, these two types of power of the Supreme Divine Fire couldn't pass through the obstacles in front of them. This meant that there was no use in using the Supreme Martial Technique here. He could only use the power of the Supreme Divine Fire. According to Kong Shinmu's guess, the power of the Supreme Divine Fire was at least at the 6th level, or even higher. Senior, you can use the power of the Supreme Divine Fire to open the tunnel. Kong Shinmu pondered for a moment and said. Moya nodded. At the same time, she released her Supreme Divine Power. She did not have the Supreme Divine Power of realization. Kong Shinmu could only sense Moya's Supreme Holy Power with his soul consciousness. After not seeing Senior Moya for a while, he could clearly sense that Moya's Supreme Divine Power had grown a lot stronger. The two of them successfully used their supreme godly powers to pass through the obstacles and arrived at another passage. The moment they left, a blood-colored attack rapidly approached. After crashing into the wall, the force was dissipated. Following that, Gu Feng's figure also swept over. Where is he? Gu Feng stood at the entrance of the passageway, looking around with his gloomy eyes. He did not see Kong Shinmu. He had clearly sensed an abnormal aura here just now. Why was it gone now? Gu Feng clenched the blood scar in her hand and waved it at the two sides of the tunnel. The passageways on both sides could definitely be opened by her blood. However, the reality was unexpected. No matter how Gu Feng attacked, she could not open any passageways. In the end, Gu Feng gave up. She looked at the dark passageway again and quickly moved forward. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something. She changed her direction and moved backward. After moving for a distance, she flung the blood scar without hesitation. This time, there seemed to be a layer of flame burning around blood scar, emitting a red glow. This flame power directly occupied the passageway and spread out along the passageway. Gu Feng took a step forward and followed the scarlet flame. After taking a few steps, she stepped on air. Her entire body lost its balance and fell rapidly. As she fell, Gu Feng's eyes focused. Without hesitation, she flung the blood scar to the side and followed it out of the passageway. When she reappeared, she was already at the entrance of the passageway. Gu Feng clearly remembered her purpose in coming to the secret territory. However, Gu Feng was a very stubborn person. Since she had her eyes on Kong Shinmu's Supreme 10 Devil Seal, she would not give up until she got it. In order to get the Supreme 10 Devil Seal, she was even willing to give up her purpose of coming here. Whether it was the disciples of the Everlasting Pavilion, the Heaven Origin Palace, the Cloud Sky Sect, or the Qing family, they were all here for the Star Map Lock. Of course, this was only the mission of the 4 sections. Each sect had their own mission. That was the Star Map Lock. In conclusion, the Star Map Lock was a space that could accommodate living beings. In that case, the Star Map Lock could transfer the Star Map Lock, which could accommodate living beings, to any parallel space. There was another name for the Star Map Lock. It was called the Dharma Seal. The Star Map Lock could be understood as the existence of a teleportation array. For cultivators, it might not be very attractive. However, the Dharma Seal was different. The history of the Dharma Seal was much older than the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Moreover, the 7 devouring demon sealing art was a kind of spell that only existed in legends. Many people had doubts about the 7 devouring demon sealing art. The Dharma Seal was different. Records of the Dharma Seal appeared in the ancient books of the various sections. The Dharma Seal was passed down. Not only did the 4 sects of the outer region want to obtain the Dharma Seal, but other sects also wanted to obtain it. Of course, apart from the outer region, cultivators from other places also wanted to obtain the Dharma Seal. Among these cultivators, there were also the Demon God Clan, the Talisman Water Clan, the Emperor Bat clan, and others who had conflicts with Kang Shinmu. The elders and clansmen who had been defeated by Kang Shinmu were the first batch to set off. Their goal was to go to the mystic realm. Along the way, they met Kang Shinmu by chance and followed him all the way. They had underestimated Kang Shinmu's strength. Not only did they not capture him, but they also ended up being wiped out. When the passageway to the mystic realm in the ancient desolate city opened, cultivators who came for the star map lock all rushed over. Obtaining the star map lock meant that they were not far from the star map lock. Kang Shinmu and Emoya only knew about the star map lock, but they had not heard about the star map lock. The two passed through the passageway obstacles and entered a new passageway. However, the two did not encounter any faults in the passageway, nor did they encounter any other obstacles. Even so, they could not find the exit in a short time. During this period, Kang Shinmu also used his soul consciousness to look for the exit. However, he found that this place was like a passageway that could never be found. After searching for a while, he could only retract his soul consciousness. Suddenly, Kang Shinmu discovered that the supreme space power of nature within the devouring power had some movement. "Senior, follow me." Kang Shinmu sensed the abnormality of this passageway. Following the supreme space power of nature's guidance, Kang Shinmu and Emoya quickly arrived at the passageway with faults. Chapter 56-94. Senior, be careful. Before he could stabilize himself, Kang Shinmu sensed something strange at the exit. Kang Shinmu took advantage of the situation and brought Emoya to the side. At the spot where Emoya was standing, several strands of blood qi emerged from the ground and intertwined with each other. Emoya was brought to the side by Kang Shinmu, and the strands of blood qi missed. It wrapped around a piece of withered rock at the side, which instantly turned into black ashes. "That's..." Emoya glanced at the black ashes. The blood qi that suddenly appeared seemed to have an extremely strong burning power. "It's that Wuxia Pavilion disciple called Gufeng." Kang Shinmu had experienced the power of Gufeng's blood scar and knew the power of the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline. The power of the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline was the same as ordinary flames. It had the power to burn other things. Unlike ordinary flames, the Scarlet Flame Qilin could burn everything. Especially the cultivator's soul and consciousness. "Are you talking about the blood scar?" Emoya stared at the black ashes on the ground, where the blood qi was disappearing. As the blood qi was disappearing, it was also burning the ground beside the withered rock. The power of the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline is indeed extraordinary. Emoya's eyes flashed as she caught sight of the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline power that was about to disappear. "This Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline power looks very pure," Emoya said gently. "This junior thinks so too." Although Kang Shinmu had never seen the Scarlet Flame Qilin with his own eyes, he could more or less tell based on the burning aura of the bloodline power and the damage it could cause to one's soul and consciousness. Kang Shinmu had fought with Gufeng personally and suffered the attacks of the blood scar before he could tell if the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline power was pure or not. On the other hand, Senior Emoya could tell with her naked eyes. This made Kang Shinmu admire Emoya from the bottom of his heart. No matter what, the appearance of the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline power at the entrance of the secret realm meant that Gufeng had been here. "Be careful. The Wuxia Pavilion's people are already here." Emoya glanced at Kang Shinmu and smiled gently. Kang Shinmu understood. He rubbed his nose resentfully. Senior is right. When Kang Shinmu attacked Haifan, he already knew what kind of trouble he would face in the future. The Wuxia Pavilion was a sect in the extraterritorial realm. To him, the Demon God clan, the Talisman Water clan, and the Emperor Bat clan were completely unknown opponents. It was even more urgent to find the 8 Gods Astrolabe's base. "Don't worry too much. This 8-god star plate seems to be very compatible with you. Moya saw Kong Shinmu like this and smiled gently. Senior, what do you mean? Kong Shinmu was a little puzzled. I know a little about the contract imprint on the 8-god's astrolabe. It was reasonable to say that the 8-god star plate could only sign contracts with a limited number of living beings. But the 8-god's astrolabe in your hand is densely packed with contract imprints, which is enough to prove that it recognizes you. Moya paused for a moment. But that didn't sound right. The 8-god's astrolabe was different from the 7 devouring devil sealing art. The 7 devour demon sealing art was a special existence. It had a spirit. The 8-god's astrolabe didn't have a spirit. At least, the one Kong Shinmu didn't have its own artifact spirit. Since it didn't have an artifact spirit, it couldn't be said that it recognized it. Moya pondered for a moment and said, or it broke through some kind of restriction, so the 8-god's astrolabe can sign contracts with more living beings. Senior is right. Kong Shinmu agreed with Moya's words. As far as he knew, the 8-god's astrolabe had only signed contracts with 5 living beings. They were Lu Zi, Fan, Jia, Shenguang, and Peyuan. After the battle with Ling Changhong, the living beings that Ling Changhong summoned from the other world were all suppressed by the 8-god's astrolabe and signed contracts with the 8-god's astrolabe. Kong Shinmu didn't participate in the whole process and couldn't interfere. Moreover, he had a feeling that after he obtained the 8-god's astrolabe, there was a certain gap between it and Hai Fan's star devour. Kong Shinmu couldn't tell what the difference was, but he had a subtle feeling. Of course, the 8-god's astrolabe signing a contract with the living beings summoned by Ling Changhong wasn't a good thing for Kong Shinmu. After all, there was no good thing in the world to gain power for no reason. Ling Changhong and his summoning artifact fell into the endless dark abyss together. It was unknown if they had really left this world. No matter what, the contracted living beings that belonged to Ling Changhong would automatically cancel the contract and return to the other world when Ling Changhong's body and soul were destroyed. It was indeed incredible to sign a contract with the 8-god's astrolabe. Kong Shinmu had carefully sized up the 8-god's astrolabe. He knew very well that the 8-god's astrolabe signed contracts with Ling Changhong's summoned creatures, not the 8-god's astrolabe itself. That could only be the base of the 8-god's astrolabe. However, he didn't know where the base of the 8-god's astrolabe was. How could it have such great power? Therefore, the ones who made those living beings sign contracts were the contracted living beings in the 8-god's astrolabe. Shenguang, Peyuan, or Jia. One of the 3. Of course, this was only Kong Shinmu's guess. As for what it was, he would only know after getting the base of the 8-god's astrolabe. Kong Shinmu and Moya didn't stay and soon left the exit. The secret realm in this secret realm was similar to the sealed secret realm. As far as the eye could see, it was a desolate place. Senior, this place is so big. Where should we find it? For the first time, Kong Shinmu felt at a loss. The star map lock is a kind of artifact scattered in the natural world. It doesn't belong to any cultivator. Even if it appears in the secret realm, it will be dropped by chance. Moya said gently. Hearing this, Kong Shinmu thought seriously and suddenly had an idea. Moya smiled softly. Kong Shinmu understood what Moya meant. Since it was a natural artifact, it would definitely be in the place where the natural power was the strongest in the secret realm. Kong Shinmu released the supreme soul power and sensed it. He locked on to the direction where the natural power was the strongest and flew over with Moya. Not long after the two left, Gufeng, who was wandering around, returned. She glanced at the scorched marks on the ground and frowned. Kong Shinmu is in here as well. Gufeng knew that Tang Xiaoyu had entered the secret realm before her, but she didn't expect Kong Shinmu to enter the secret realm as well. There's a path to heaven but you don't want to take it. Since you're here, you can stay here forever. Gufeng sneered. She squatted down and touched the black soil on the ground. Her eyes narrowed and locked on to a direction. At the same time, Dan Yuanfei and the other disciples of the Wuji Pavilion entered the secret realm one after another. Feng, did you see Xiaofan? Dan Yuanfei asked in a deep voice. Eldest senior brother, Xiaofan came to the desolate ancient city a long time ago. He said he wanted to get the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Gufeng said. Why? Didn't he come with you? Hearing this, Dan Yuanfei's face suddenly became gloomy. Eldest senior, I know someone who knows Xiaofan's whereabouts. Gufeng seemed to have thought of something. She quickly left after saying those words. Chapter 5695. Feng. Just as Dan Yuanfei was about to ask something, Gufeng's figure turned into a shadow and left. In the blink of an eye, Dan Yuanfei noticed that there was something wrong with the communication jade slip. The direction of the communication jade slip was exactly the opposite of the direction Gufeng left. At the same time, the disciples of the other sects seemed to have received some kind of guidance, and all of them locked their gazes in the direction Dan Yuanfei was looking at. Some rogue cultivators even took the lead and set off. Dan Yuanfei hesitated for a moment, but considering Gufeng's strength, he decided to go in the direction of the abnormality first. Senior brother, there's something I don't know if I should say. Just as Dan Yuanfei was about to leave, a disciple of Wuji Pavilion suddenly spoke. Speak. Dan Yuanfei's footsteps were not slow as he said lightly. The person senior sister is chasing seems to be called Kong Shinmu. The disciple hesitated for a moment before saying. As soon as he said this, several disciples next to him nodded. Although they entered the secret realm relatively late, they had been following senior sister Gufeng for a long time and often heard senior sister Gufeng mention a name. This name was Kong Shinmu. They didn't know why senior sister had been thinking about Kong Shinmu, but they knew Gufeng's character well and didn't dare to ask. Kong Shinmu. Dan Yuanfei heard this and stopped slightly. This name was familiar. Dan Yuanfei glanced in the direction Gufeng left and was silent for a moment. That Kong Shinmu's supreme divine power seems to be only at the 6th level, which is very weak. Don't worry about senior sister. One of the disciples said to the disciple who spoke just now. That's right, he always relies on that Tang Xiaoyu. If it weren't for Tang Xiaoyu, he would have been caught by senior sister. The disciples of Wuji Pavilion whispered. Tang Xiaoyu doesn't have any other skills, but he's good at running away. I saw his senior brother not long ago. He'll be caught soon. When these words fell into Dan Yuanfei's ears, it gave him a reassurance. Dan Yuanfei didn't hesitate and rushed in the direction of the abnormality just now. The disciples of Wuji Pavilion gathered at the exit hurriedly followed when they saw senior brother set off. The disciples of the other sects also left one after another. The disciples of the Firmament sect and Qing sect also scattered. Only the disciples of Tianyuan Palace stayed in place. They were waiting for Lian Yi's orders. Compared to the other sects, the disciples of Tianyuan Palace were dressed in a very low-key manner. When he heard the Wuji Pavilion disciple mention Tang Xiaoyu, he remained calm and waited for Lian Yi's arrival. Tang Xiaoyu had trespassed into the Heavenly Yuan Palace's forbidden grounds and broken the Heavenly Yuan Palace's rules. He had become a sinner of the Heavenly Yuan Palace. However, the palace master had clearly ordered the eldest senior brother to come and capture Tang Xiaoyu, and no one else was allowed to interfere. Therefore, when they heard about Tang Xiaoyu, these disciples did not have much of a reaction. Not long after all the cultivators had left, the yellow sand under their feet seemed to have been hit by a huge explosion and collapsed. The source of the collapse was where Kong Shinmu and Mo Ya were. Of course, now there was Gufeng. At this moment, the two sides were engaged in a fierce battle. The moment Gufeng arrived, she targeted Kang Xinmu. The reason why the ground collapsed was that Kang Xinmu had cleverly neutralized the strong power in Gufeng's blood mark. Most of it fell on the yellow sand ground, causing the collapse. Seeing that Kang Xinmu had dodged several attacks, she shifted her attack to Emoya. Emoya was currently looking at the yellow sand ground, trying to figure out where the star map lock might be. After all, the two of them had only entered this secret realm by chance. Before this, they had not made any preparations. It was indeed difficult to find the star map lock. Taking advantage of her distraction, Gufeng's attack suddenly came. "Girl, are you being unreasonable?" Kang Xinmu had been watching Gufeng's movements, and he was also paying attention to Emoya's situation. Once any danger approached Emoya, he would immediately neutralize it. When Gufeng attacked Emoya, Kang Xinmu rushed to Emoya and took her to the side. "Is she really your weakness?" Seeing that Kang Xinmu was so nervous about Emoya, Gufeng sneered. "Girl, you," Kang Xinmu was just about to argue with Gufeng. "Hit him, sneak attack or whatever, but don't touch Senior Emoya." However, before Kang Xinmu could finish his sentence, Gufeng's figure moved again. This time, even Kang Xinmu could not catch Gufeng's movement. He relied on the supreme soul power to avoid Gufeng's sudden attack. "You are not qualified to negotiate with me." Gufeng stomped on the air and attacked again. At the same time, the blood mark in her hand also attacked Kang Xinmu. The blood mark instantly turned into shadows in the air, as if several red flame cheilants had descended, burning the air and making sizzling sounds. Kang Xinmu was just about to dodge when he realized that there seemed to be an enchantment in the surrounding space. He could not break through it just by using his movement technique. Gufeng sneered, "You are a level 6 Supreme Divine Power Supreme Cultivator. Do you think you are qualified to come here?" Gufeng's words and actions all revealed her disdain for Kang Xinmu. Emoya frowned, "Little girl, didn't your family teach you how to behave?" "Old woman, stop pretending in front of me." Gufeng immediately retorted, "Not to mention that this is a sealed secret realm. Everyone obtains rare treasures with their own ability. Even outside the secret realm, the weak are not qualified to obtain treasures. Every cultivator needs to rely on their own strength to obtain the resources they need, not rely on others' charity." After Gufeng said this, she waved the blood mark again. The blood-colored shadows in the air suddenly dispersed, forming a barrier, trapping Kang Xinmu and Emoya inside. If Kang Xinmu had just entered the secret realm, he would definitely be trapped inside with only level 6 Supreme Divine Power. But the current Kang Xinmu was different. After the battle with Leng Changhong, not only did Kang Xinmu's Supreme Divine Power increase greatly, but his Supreme Dragon Martial skill also improved. Facing the barrier created by the blood mark shadow, Kang Xinmu directly broke through it with his Supreme Dragon Martial skill. Humph! Kang Xinmu broke through her barrier, but Gufeng just sneered. "If you can't break this barrier, I will look down on you. Two weak people are not worthy to be her opponent." Gufeng took back the blood mark she threw out. "Kang Xinmu, don't be contaminated by her blood." Emoya's beautiful eyes narrowed as she said. "Senior, be careful." Kang Xinmu had the black dragon scales protecting his body, so he was not afraid of being eroded by the blood. Of course, the most important thing was that the Supreme Holy Ice Domain had merged with his Sea of Consciousness. If there was any abnormality in his Sea of Consciousness, it would be devoured by the power of the Supreme Holy Ice Domain. "I'm fine." Emoya smiled gently. "You two stop chattering in front of me." Gufeng couldn't stand the so-called mutual care between Kang Xinmu and Emoya. Chapter 5696. Gufeng muttered a chant and the blood scar on her hand disappeared. At this moment, with Gufeng as the center, a thick blood qi spread out in all directions. As the blood qi spread out, the air was burning. Everything in this dilapidated land that was touched by the blood qi was burned to ashes. Soon, the yellow sand land was scorched black. Kang Xinmu brought Emoya and dashed to the side. His speed was much faster than the blood qi's spreading speed. Soon, they were out of the blood qi's range. After leaving the blood qi's range, Kang Xinmu did not stop and continued to dash forward with Emoya. Their goal was the star map lock. There was no need to get entangled with Gufeng. Let's see where you can run to. Gufeng was not flustered. She had the secret land's map. No matter where Kang Xinmu and Emoya went, she could find them accurately. What a troublesome person. Gufeng followed closely behind and was within Kang Xinmu's perception. I think she's not looking for you just for the great devil seal. Emoya's beautiful eyes blinked gently. Her gentle voice contained some teasing. Senior, you're right. She's not just after the great devil seal. She wants to kill me. Kang Xinmu felt unlucky. At the same time, he felt that what Tang Xiaoyu said made sense. Gufeng was a crazy woman. She's not qualified yet. Emoya's tone was indifferent. Kang Xinmu sped up and dashed forward. Kang Xinmu, stop. Emoya's beautiful eyes suddenly looked at a dried lake not far away. Kang Xinmu stopped when he heard that. Before he could look at the dried lake in front of him, he felt the attack from the blood scar. Kang Xinmu formed a seal with one hand and threw a few palm strikes in the direction of the blood scar's attack. What happened next shocked Kang Xinmu. Gufeng's blood scar's attack penetrated his supreme dragon technique. As a result, blood scar's attack came directly at him. Kang Xinmu had the ability to face it head-on, but after some thought, he decisively released his devouring power. The moment the devouring power spread out, it surrounded Xue Hen's attack like a tide and devoured it. The devouring power quickly devoured all of blood scar's attacks. Kang Xinmu didn't retract his devouring power. Instead, he controlled his devouring power to fly in the direction of the attack. Gufeng quickly sensed the attack of the Supreme Dragon martial skill. She thought that the blood scar would be able to withstand Kang Xinmu's Supreme Dragon martial skill, but she did not expect that the blood scar would directly ignore the Supreme Dragon martial skill. Facing Kang Xinmu's Supreme Dragon martial skill, Gufeng displayed her Supreme martial skill for the first time. Gufeng's supreme godly power had reached the 8th level, and the strength of her supreme martial technique was comparable to the peak of the 8th level, close to the 9th level. This was what Gufeng was proud of. She was not only the daughter of the Everlasting Pavilion's Pavilion Master, but her strength was also outstanding among the young disciples of the Everlasting Pavilion. Compared to Tang Xiaoyu, Gufeng looked down on Kang Xinmu even more. In Gufeng's eyes, Kang Xinmu was just an ordinary cultivator who had gotten lucky. Without the extreme 10 directions devil seal, Kang Xinmu was nothing. With such a powerful strength, Gufeng quickly dissolved Kang Xinmu's supreme dragon martial skill. Just as so. Gufeng's toes touched the ground, and her body disappeared. In the next moment, Gufeng appeared again. She was already at the edge of the lake. She was standing opposite of Kang Xinmu and Emoya. Just as Gufeng was about to land on the ground, she sensed an abnormally cold and sinister energy suddenly assaulting her. It was like a gust of wind, sweeping past her body and leaving no trace. No. It wasn't just wind. It was a force. Kang Xinmu's devouring power instantly trapped Gufeng. At this moment, Gufeng felt the blood stain on her hand suddenly emit a buzzing sound. Immediately, the power within the blood stain kept flowing out. Is it a suction force? Gufeng quickly realized that the wind surrounding her body was a suction force. It was the existence of this strange wind that caused the blood stain to have such an abnormality. After all, Gufeng was the owner of the blood stain. Coupled with her strength, she quickly controlled the blood stain. As for the strange wind surrounding her body, Gufeng did not intend to let it go. He abruptly unleashed his soul consciousness and enveloped the strange wind. Kang Xinmu originally wanted to use his devouring power to directly devour the power within the blood stain. However, before he could devour it, Gufeng stopped him. It was also at this moment that he truly felt Gufeng's supreme divine power for the first time. Although Gufeng did not release her supreme divine power, the aura of her supreme martial skill contained the element of water. Her supreme divine power must be related to the element of water. It could not be ruled out that Gufeng had two kinds of supreme divine powers. Even so, one of the supreme divine powers was related to the element of water. Moreover, Gufeng's supreme divine power was at least above the 8th level. Her soul consciousness could not be underestimated. Just now, Gufeng had used her soul consciousness to stop the devouring power from the bloodstain's power. Gufeng could control the Scarlet Flame Qilin's bloodline power, which was enough to prove that her soul consciousness was not weak. Your devouring power is really powerful. Gufeng wiped away the devouring power that trapped the blood stain. She immediately recognized this power and said indifferently. In the next moment, Gufeng attacked again. Kang Xinmu had already figured out Gufeng's methods. She liked to attack when people were unprepared. It was fine if she attacked him, but if she kept targeting Emoya, she would be looking for trouble. Even Emoya did not have time to react to Gufeng's sudden attack. "Senior, stand behind me." Kang Xinmu used his supreme soul power to seal the space around Emoya. As long as Gufeng's attack came, it would be blocked by the barrier formed by the supreme power of the soul. The premise was that Gufeng only had one kind of supreme divine power. If she had another kind of supreme divine power, the boundary that Kang Xinmu had set up might not be able to block it. "Kang Xinmu, you care so much about this woman. If I kill her in front of you, what will you do?" Gufeng's phoenix eyes moved back and forth between Kang Xinmu and Emoya. Her lips curled into a cruel smile. As soon as she said that, the air suddenly froze. An extremely cold aura suddenly attacked. Kang Xinmu hurriedly pulled Emoya up and leaped into the air, avoiding the extremely cold aura. Before he could even descend, the ground he was about to land on was frozen. Ice sprouted from the ground and spread at a speed visible to the naked eye, extending several miles away. Kang Xinmu's reaction was not slow. He stepped on the air and landed. Chapter 5697. Kang Xinmu unleashed the power of supreme divine fire. In that instant, the frozen air around him shattered. A series of cracking sounds rang out, and ice shards fell to the ground. Kang Xinmu's feet were freed, and he brought Emoya to the side. However, Gufeng's attacks were relentless. Every time Kang Xinmu landed, it was within Gufeng's calculations. Gufeng was always able to freeze the space before Kang Xinmu landed. Supreme Holy Ice Power? Kang Xinmu's pupils constricted when he saw this. He had always wanted to comprehend the Supreme Holy Ice Power, but he did not expect Gufeng, who had been following him, to comprehend the Supreme Holy Ice Power. No. Emoya sensed the supreme divine power that Gufeng had unleashed. Kang Xinmu heaved a sigh of relief. If it was the supreme holy ice power, then it would be difficult to deal with. However, there was no water element nearby. How did Gufeng create ice? To be more precise, Gufeng had frozen the air. There was no water elemental energy in the air around here. Not to mention this space, even the secret plane here was very strange. Yellow sand filled the sky, and the entire place was desolate. The air was filled with the power of the earth element. This should be a supreme divine power similar to the supreme holy ice power, but not the supreme holy ice power. Moya fell into deep thought. Senior, there is no water element here. How did she freeze the air? This was what Kang Shinmu did not understand. Ordinary peerless ice power couldn't do this. Or perhaps the supreme power of water couldn't freeze the air or even space out of thin air. She only froze the air, not the space. This means that her supreme divine power is not of the holy attribute, Moya said gently. For this to happen, there is a high chance that she has the power to create water element. She combined the water element with her supreme divine power to achieve her desired goal. Moya glanced at the frozen air in front of her with her beautiful eyes. Gufeng's power was not limited to freezing the air. Her speed was also very fast. She would always be faster than Kang Shinmu. No wonder she's able to catch up to Tang Xiaoyu every time. It seems that her power is not simple. Moya sighed. Putting aside Gufeng's arrogant, despotic, and unreasonable personality, she was indeed very strong. Gufeng had relied on her own strength to chase after Tang Xiaoyu, who had the manifestation origin stacking technique. She was indeed not to be underestimated. Of course, there's another reason, Moya suddenly said. Kang Shinmu listened to Moya while paying attention to Gufeng's attacks. It gave him the feeling that Gufeng had not used her full strength yet. She seemed to be at ease. Gufeng had indeed not used her full strength. However, it was not because she wanted to play around with Kang Shinmu, but because Gufeng looked down on Kang Shinmu. Naturally, she knew the location of the Star Atlas Lock. The map showed that the Star Atlas Lock was nearby. Now, it seemed to be below this lake. Kang Shinmu and Moya, who had fallen into the underground cave abode, were not in a hurry to enter the cave abode. Senior, the water element here is very rich. Kang Shinmu grabbed and a few drops of water appeared in his hand. And this is the other reason I wanted to talk about. She sensed the water elements in the lake first and used them to her advantage, Moya said gently. She's here. Kang Shinmu quickly sensed Gufeng's aura again. Let's go in first, Moya said. Wait a moment. Before Kang Shinmu entered the cave abode, he activated all the mechanisms and secret passages at the cave abode entrance. He even used the Supreme Holy Land's power to dissolve all the water element in this place. After doing all that, the two of them entered the cave abode. This cave abode looked like it was man-made. There was no sign of an expert who created this cave abode. However, other than the secret passages at the entrance, there were no obstacles in the cave abode. Kang Shinmu and Moya did find the Star Atlas Lock in the cave abode. The Star Atlas Lock that appeared here was in the form of a scroll. Chapter 5698. The Star Map Lock is a Dharma artifact that exists in a natural space and has yet to be obtained by any cultivator. It's understandable if it appears in a naturally formed cave abode. However, it's obvious that this cave abode is man-made. Kang Shinmu voiced out his doubts. This was exactly what Moya was thinking about. Kang Shinmu was right. There was indeed a problem with the Star Map Lock appearing in a man-made cave abode. However, it was worth noting that the Star Map Lock in front of them was indeed a genuine Star Map Lock. Moya had already used her powers to examine it. It was a Star Map Lock. Kang Shinmu, there's no problem with the Star Map Lock, Moya said softly. Huh? Kang Shinmu was puzzled. Kang Shinmu, is there a possibility that we're not the first batch of cultivators to find the Star Map Lock? There were other cultivators who found the Star Map Lock before us but were unable to unravel its mystery, Moya analyzed. They wanted to obtain the Star Map Lock but were unable to take it away. Hence, they set up this cave abode here. Senior, you're right. Kang Shinmu approached the Star Map Lock. If what Senior Moya said was true, Kang Shinmu did not care who the owner of this cave abode was. He was prepared to take a look at the star map lock. The star map lock was placed on a stone table. When Kang Xinmu approached the stone table, he felt the immense pressure emitted by the star map lock. Kang Xinmu's expression froze. According to his understanding, the star map lock was a spatial Dharma artifact that could accommodate living beings. How could it emit such immense pressure? Soon, Moya also felt the pressure from the star map lock. Moya's beautiful eyes froze. She did not have a comprehensive understanding of the star map lock. Now that she felt the pressure from the star map lock, her curiosity was piqued. However, the supreme divine power that she cultivated was rather unique. The pressure from the star map lock disappeared very quickly. Moya believed that with Kang Xinmu's current powers, it would not be difficult for him to resolve the pressure from the star map lock. Just as Moya expected, Kang Xinmu quickly dispelled the pressure from the star map lock. He stood in front of the star atlas lock and observed it. He narrowed his eyes and saw the true appearance of the stone table with the star map lock on it. The stone table was essentially a stone table, but it contained a powerful deciphering technique. It could be seen that the owner of the cave had created such a stone table in order to crack the star atlas lock. Kang Xinmu condensed the supreme dragon martial skill and slammed the stone table. Ripples immediately appeared on the stone table as if it was water. A large amount of water element was emitted from it. It was clearly a stone table, but it was water elements that appeared? Kang Xinmu, be careful. I'll go over there to take a look. Moya came to the other side of the cave, where there were all kinds of scrolls. Senior, be careful of formations and the like. Kang Xinmu turned to look at Moya. Moya casually picked up a scroll and flipped through it. She realized that it recorded clues about the star map lock. It was not just this scroll. The other scrolls beside it were all clues about the star map lock. Kang Xinmu, this is the record of the star map lock. Moya quickly recorded the description of the star map lock. The star map lock was indeed a spatial Dharma artifact. However, apart from being able to accommodate living beings, it also had a powerful teleportation ability. There were very few records about teleportation on these scrolls. The scrolls mainly recorded what happened after the owner of the cave found the star map lock. Just like what was shown here, the owner of the cave found the star map lock but was unable to obtain it. In order to prevent other cultivators from stealing the star map lock, the owner of the cave specially built this cave. After that, he used the stone table array to crack the Dharma power of the star map lock. The star map lock was a Dharma artifact formed by natural space. After a Dharma artifact was formed, it would not appear in the world. Take the star atlas lock as an example. After a Dharma artifact appeared in the world, it would have its own Dharma power. In other words, after it appeared in the world, it would release its Dharma power and exist in the world. The star map lock appeared in the world and released its Dharma power, which was also a declaration of its existence to the world. Normally, the Dharma power of a Dharma artifact like this would disappear automatically after a certain period of time. As for how long it would disappear, the duration of the Dharma power of each Dharma artifact was uncertain. The owner of the cave found the star map lock but was unable to crack its Dharma power, which was why the star map lock still existed. The stone table that was left here existed to crack the Dharma power of the star map lock. From the looks of it, the stone table was unable to crack the Dharma power of the star map lock. Of course, this also meant that the Dharma power of the star map lock still existed. Kang Xinmu planned to find a breakthrough point from the stone table. Kang Xinmu gathered his power and pressed it on the stone table. At that moment, a devouring power swept out and swallowed the stone table. Only then did Kang Xinmu realize that the stone table was not an Dharma artifact, but a type of power. After the devouring power swallowed it, Kang Xinmu could clearly feel a lot of water elements. To be more precise, it was a type of supreme God power. It was called Supreme God Power. It was the Supreme God Power of the spiritual Qi that cultivators absorbed. Supreme God Power was one of the natural powers of heaven and earth, and it contained many types of elements. This included water elements, earth elements, and even more elements. After swallowing the Supreme God Power, Kang Xinmu immediately understood that Gufeng's Supreme God Power was also Supreme God Power. Gufeng already had Supreme God Power, and this place also had Supreme God Power, which meant that Supreme God Power was multiple types of Supreme God Power. With Kang Xinmu's current cultivation, he could completely control Supreme God Power. He decided to spend some time to comprehend the Supreme Spiritual Energy. The process of understanding Supreme God Power was not difficult, and the entire process was the same as understanding Supreme God Fire Power. The only difference was that Supreme God Power was multiple types of Supreme God Power, and one needed to choose a good cultivation direction in the process of understanding it. By choosing a cultivation direction that was suitable for oneself, one would have a certain chance of winning when encountering cultivators who also cultivated Supreme God Power in the future. The direction of Supreme God Power that Kang Xinmu understood was supportive, which was to combine the Supreme God Power that he had already understood and the Supreme God Power that he was about to understand. For now, Kang Xinmu had the Supreme God Fire Power and the Supreme Holy Land Power. When Supreme God Power was released, he could control the fire elements and earth elements in the world, which could support his Supreme God Power. The reason why Kang Xinmu made this choice was because he had considered the future Supreme God Power. Supreme God Power was multiple types of Supreme God Power. It also had multiple types of elemental power, which was very suitable for Kang Xinmu. After Kang Xinmu stepped into the Supreme God Power, he experienced several battles and saw all kinds of Supreme God Power, including the Supreme God Power. His ability to understand Supreme God Power was naturally not the same as before. Very quickly, he comprehended the Supreme Spiritual Energy. After Kang Xinmu devoured the power on the stone table also disappeared. The star map lock on the stone table did not fall, and it still remained in its original position. This scene proved that the star map lock had appeared here in the beginning, and it was suspended in the air. Kang Xinmu glanced at the ground on the side, and realized that the ground was tilted, and there was an obvious depression at the stone table. The stone table was dug by the owner of the cave abode, which was why the stone table was placed there. Kang Xinmu looked at the star map lock, and as soon as he got close to it, he felt the strong pressure from the star map lock. The pressure was the power of the star map lock. He did not know when the star map lock appeared, but the power of the star map lock still existed. Senior, do you know how to break the power of the star map lock? The pressure brought by the power of the star map lock made Kang Xinmu unable to pick up the star map lock. The power of the star map lock. Moya walked over when she heard this. After thinking for a moment, she said, "The power of the star map lock is more difficult to break." Chapter 5699. Kang Xinmu looked at the star map lock floating in mid-air again. He had tried many methods, but he couldn't take it away. Based on the current situation, that's right. Moya sized up the star map lock. Thinking back to what she had just read about the star map lock, the owner of the cave had tried everything he could but couldn't break the power of the star map lock. The owner of the cave abode was a supreme cultivator himself, and his supreme divine power had even reached the 9th level. He even had the tendency to pry into the gate of rules. After he had tried everything, he guessed if he could use rules to break the power of the star map lock. For this, he had traveled around to pry into the rules. Unfortunately, when he had stepped into the gate of rules, he hadn't been able to control his state of mind and got lost. Even though he had left the gate of rules, his cultivation couldn't improve anymore. Senior, do you think the star map lock is related to the power of rules? Kang Xinmu wondered if there was a connection between the two powers. The power of rules is a type of power that can be comprehended and transformed when the supreme strength reaches a certain level. It can be understood as turning the supreme strength of the territory into rules. Moya said gently. But the power of star map lock is a type of power that exists in the natural world. The most common is the power of naturally formed instruments. Hearing Moya's words, the seven devouring demon sealing art appeared in Kang Xinmu's mind. Whether or not the seven devouring demon sealing art was a natural instrument, Feng Ling had another identity. Just like the power of star map lock, it was tied to the seven devouring demon sealing art. When he was trapped in Leng Zhanghong's battlefield domain, Feng Ling's appearance didn't give Kang Xinmu hope. On the contrary, ever since he had escaped, Kang Xinmu had been feeling uneasy. Compared to the divine light from the other world or cruel, Kang Xinmu was more afraid of Feng Ling. Although the power of rules was far away, he could at least figure out what kind of power it was. The power of star map lock was different. Perhaps he had come into contact with it before, but it was ultimately an untouchable power. In other words, there is no way for us to break the power of magic, right? Kang Xinmu looked at the star atlas lock, which was right before his eyes, but he could not obtain it. According to what Moya had said, the owner of the cave manor had 9th level of supreme godly power and was even close to reaching the gate of rules. Yet, he was unable to break the power of the star atlas lock. This was enough to prove the strength of his star atlas lock. As far as I know, magic power does not exist forever. After a certain amount of time, it will disappear on its own. Or it could be fused into a Dharma artifact and become a part of it. In the end, it will become the artifact spirit of the magic tool, Moya said gently. Kang Xinmu lifted his eyes and looked at Moya. Senior, how long do you think it will take before the power of the Star Atlas lock fuses into the Star Atlas lock? Kang Xinmu had a bitter expression on his face. Given the strength of the Star Atlas lock, it was unlikely that it would disappear. At most, it would merge into the Star Atlas lock. According to the Cave Master's records, the power of magic on the Star Atlas lock has existed for hundreds of years, Moya said gently. Kang Xinmu did not know what to say for a moment. It had existed for too long, right? Kang Xinmu, don't be too discouraged. If you can't get it, the people behind you can't get it either. Moya covered her mouth and chuckled. Senior, you're right. Kang Xinmu thought that Moya was comforting him. Kang Xinmu pondered for a moment again, but he still could not break the power of magic on the Star Atlas lock. He could only give up for now. Suddenly, Kang Xinmu seemed to have thought of something. Senior, when I left the battlefield domain predicament, I appeared in another city. Kang Xinmu suddenly remembered what he had seen and heard. When a few cultivators mentioned the Star Atlas lock, they also mentioned the Star Atlas lock core. A few of them were disciples of the Everlasting Pavilion. I guess the people from the Everlasting Pavilion were mainly here for the Star Atlas lock core. Since the disciples of the Everlasting Pavilion were here for the Star Atlas lock core, the other 3 sects in the Outer Realm must also be here for the Star Atlas lock core. Moya said. Could the Star Atlas lock core be something similar to magic power? Kang Xinmu speculated. Kang Xinmu's words made Moya suddenly realize something. When she was reading the scroll left behind by the owner of the cave mansion, some of the records on the scroll made her very puzzled. It said that the process of breaking the power of magic power was because he was restricted by the rules, and that it was the heavenly Tao's punishment. At first glance, the words left behind by the owner of the cave mansion were very confusing. Now it seemed that it should be about the Star Atlas lock core. The scroll was not completely written, but according to the information Moya had previously obtained, after the owner of the cave mansion came back from his travels, his mind had been damaged, and he would forever be stuck at the 9th level of the supreme divine power. He would never be able to step into the door of the rules in this life. Under such circumstances, he once again found a clue that seemed to be the Star Atlas lock core, which made him completely collapse. The owner of the cave mansion had very little records about the Star Atlas lock. It should be said that he only mentioned it slightly, and then didn't make any other records. After that, he only made a rough map of the mystic realm and didn't do anything else. As for the fate of the owner of the cave mansion, there was no clear statement. Kang Xinmu, this scroll. Mo Ye handed one of the scrolls to Kang Xinmu. According to what is written here, the Star Atlas lock core is very likely related to the rules, which means it has the same effect as the power of magic power. Senior, I'm thinking if we should find the Star Atlas lock first. Maybe we can use the Star Atlas lock to break the power of magic power on the Star Atlas lock. Kang Xinmu said what he was thinking. With the existence of the power of magic power, no cultivator who entered the mystic realm would be able to take the Star Atlas lock away. Yes. Mo Ye nodded. Kang Xinmu released his soul consciousness, which occupied the entire cave mansion in an instant. It was also at this moment that he realized that there was a teleportation formation in the cave mansion. The formation lines were very common, which meant that it was an ordinary teleportation formation. Kang Xinmu and Mo Ye looked at the teleportation formation and activated it. The other end of the teleportation formation was the outside world of the cave mansion. In front of them was still yellow sand, and the wind was howling. Everywhere they looked, it was barren. However, what was surprising was that in such an environment, what was left on the yellow sand was not the white bones that they had imagined, but a living cultivator. Kang Xinmu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect to meet Gufeng here. If it was other disciples of the Wuji Pavilion, it would make sense. However, the person standing in front of him was clearly Gufeng, who had been following him all the way. Not only Kang Xinmu, but even Mo Ye was a little confused. Gufeng had been following them all the way, and before they entered the cave mansion, Kang Xinmu had activated the hidden weapons in front of the cave mansion. Even if Gufeng had quickly deciphered the hidden weapons, she should have entered the cave mansion first and come through the teleportation formation. How did she appear in front of them?